Today is June 2nd, 2024. I'm Leah Aldridge, and I'm here with my sister Kim Kimble for The Interviews, an oral history of television. And we're in Los Angeles, California. How you doing?
How you doing? Hey,
Hey.
Lily.
So why don't we take a little bit of time and just kind of get some background information for you. Tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Wow.
Where did you grow up? What was your family like?
Okay.
And what was moving to Los Angeles like for you?
Okay. Well, first off, I was born from Chicago, Illinois, Windy City. That's where I started, and then at a very young age, we moved to California, and it was definitely a different scenery going from, Chicago, Windy City, cold, and then coming to LA, warm. I remember, there were palm trees and, everybody were wearing like safari suits. That was a whole nother style and a vibe. And, I think, I was kind of young to really appreciate it, but it was like it felt like a new era, a new beginning. And I grew up watching my mother and my grandmother do hair. My grandmother would be doing hair in the kitchen at home, and then my mother would work in a salon. So I'm come from a dynasty of hairstylists.
Big Mama was the original kitchen beautician, right?
She was, and the reason why she was is because, because I look at my mother and my grandmother, two different type of hairstylists. My mother was more into style and, she was a great cutter and colorist. And my grandmother was into hair care and nurturing people's hair. And they when she retired from the salon, they followed her home. So she would still do a few clients at home because they didn't want to go anywhere else because it was interesting. I remember one lady, that was the longest her hair had ever grown. And so she didn't want to go to anybody else.
It's interesting that you would make those distinctions between Big Ma and Mom because you seem to be a composite of both.
Exactly. I took something from both of them. Of course, I love, being a hairstylist into style and interesting and intricate hair. But also, I'm also concerned about the health of the client's hair and taking care of the hair because I feel like healthy hair looks good. It's going to look good if it's healthy.
Does great hair equal confidence?
Great hair does equal confidence. Let me tell you something. When I get my hair done, I feel better. I feel good. I feel cute. I feel fabulous. I get a whole nother persona when my hair is done as opposed to when it's not. And the reason I came up with great hair equals confidence, when I would watch my clients transform literally in my chair. When they're sitting down getting their hair done, they come in one way feeling very down and like, oh God, I'm gonna be here all day, looking at their watch and, or their phone. And then when I get to those last few curls, the last few touches on their hair, I see them sit up in the chair. They start putting lipstick on, making plans to go somewhere. And you could tell they just different. And even when I work with celebrities, okay, because we're talking about the everyday client in the chair, and now we're talking about celebrities as performers, and you see them put their hair on, and then they start, they get a whole nother persona, and they start throwing their hair and performing. You can see that confidence rile up in them because they have their complete look. And even actresses, their characters they start getting into character when they get the right hair and makeup on. They're like, it all really helps to sell the entire image that you're trying to portray.
Awesome. Did you watch a lot of TV growing up?
I did. I watched a lot of television. I'm going to date myself, but this is when music videos started coming out. I used to love to watch music videos. And I used to love it, look at magazines. I loved fashion and TV. As a young girl, I watched a lot.
Were you aware of whether you saw people on television that looked like you?
Very seldom at that age. There was a few, but not as much as you see now. But yeah, very few. But I was definitely into those. I was definitely into watching TV though.
Were there any shows that stood out for you?
Facts of Life, because there was one Tootie. She was our, Tootie was a girl like me, Facts of Life was a show that I watched, but there's a lot of great shows.
Kim Fields?
Yeah, Kim Fields.
Kim Fields.
Kim Fields, who played Tootie.
Nice. Kim Fields. We're dating Kim Fields now, aren't we? Anyway, did you know from childhood that you wanted to grow up and do hair?
You know what? I didn't at first, but I remember, and I don't even talk about this much, but I had this, I think it's more than just doing hair. I had this creative energy as a toddler. I remember I used to, because I didn't have a lot of dolls, I didn't have a lot of toys for some reason. I used to create my own paper dolls, versions of people. I would call them people. And I'd have people that went to church, people that went to school, and I would, create clothes for them, do their hair, and I had my own little community of my own. I think I enjoyed making them as well, and I was working with my hands. So I didn't really get that I wanted to be a hairstylist. I used to make magazines and draw the hair and do all this stuff, as a kid. And I thought when I became a teenager, it was a big 90s era and fashion was a thing for me. And I thought I was becoming a fashion designer because I loved all the Patrick Kellys and the Willie Smiths. Those were black designers, and I loved the clothes that they would make. Like they put these big buttons on cat suits, and so I did my first fashion show at 18.
Was that the cat suit with all the safety pins?
Yeah, and I created I was actually younger. Yeah, I was 18, maybe a little younger than 18. I put all these safety pins on the cat suit, and I thought, fashion was going to be my thing. So let me just go back a little bit. When I was 16, I had the thought that, you know what, I'm going to go to beauty college when I left Chicago, because I went back to live with my dad for a couple years. I said, I'm going to go to hair school, learn how to do hair so I can work my way, because I didn't have a lot of money for college, to go to fashion school. And I went to beauty college. It took me 3 years because I went through high school through an ROP program, so I could only go a couple of hours a day. And by the time I graduated high school, I, got my license. But I did my first fashion show and interned for a designer called Duvall. At the time, in the Mert Park area, he had a little studio. He was doing fashion shows. He did a fashion show for the Sentinel paper, which is like a local paper for the neighborhood. And he's, I was working for him, and he asked me if I wanted to show some clothes in the fashion show. So I went ahead and got in the show. But I realized quickly when I was working for him, I was like, I don't really like sewing. That's not really my thing. And I didn't study, didn't know how to make patterns or anything like that. But I did love designing. I would draw stuff, and I loved creating stuff like that. But very quickly, and also that was the first and only fashion show that I've ever designed clothes for. And it landed in the Sentinel paper. One of my cat suit with the safety pins was in the paper. And that was exciting. But right at the same time, I was finishing beauty college. I got, I started working in a hair salon, a barbershop, and then I started going to hair shows. And there birthed the whole nother idea about hair. I knew that I would not be just standing behind a chair, because I was watching all these hairstylists at these shows, flipping scissors, cutting hair. It was more of a showmanship kind of thing. They were just like fabulous. They were talking, and they had crowds of people watching them, and then hair competitions, hair shows. And in that world, I got to do creative hair. I started wanting to compete in hair competitions and be a platform artist. So I would, do all these fantasy hair competitions, and I got to design the clothes for my my presentations. So that kind of fueled my designer, but I was really into the hair. And I felt like watching do that, because to me, it just took it to a whole nother place. Hair is just more than just doing hair in a hair salon. And also, I felt like I had a purpose with doing hair. Like when I would see how people would be happy with the work that I do, trying to take the hair from one place to another, it kind of fulfilled something in me when I would see people be happy and thrilled about what I'd done to their hair. And I felt like, oh, wow, this is something I want to do. I'm going to do this. And I let fashion go. Only other time I would dabble in fashion is when I was trying to put together a presentation and I needed to design the clothes to go with the hair. And which to me worked great for me later on in life, because now, what I do now when I work from whether it's television, magazine shoots, music videos, I think I collaborate well with the, fashion. I get an understanding because I kind of can see a whole picture of it. So when I see the clothes, I can I can design what the hair is going to work with the clothes. And I do feel because, early on in my career, I, always kind of loved the whole, not just the hair, but the complete look, the clothes, makeup, everything. It all works together. And, it helps me visualize what I'm going to do for the hair.
Nice. So at some point, doing hair went from, just a kind of lifestyle maintenance thing to artistry.
Yes, and I think what's interesting about the artistry part of it is that I think I was always into art as a kid. I mean, even in school, I was not the most academic, but I loved art. Like I was always getting great grades in art, and that was my favorite class. Something about artistic things. I was really drawn more to that more than the math of it all, which is important. But and as I think kid growing up, when I was creating all those like paper dolls and stuff, I had this. I look back now and I go, I had this creative energy. I love to create things, which even today I still I get excited when I am, working and creating and doing a project because I get to think, I get to, use my brain in a creative way.
I have to say, looking back at the time with you and your people, none of us had any idea that that's what was going on inside your head. We just knew it was imaginative and creative, and you were able to entertain yourself for hours.
Yes.
Playing with your paper people.
Yes.
But none of us knew that it would lead to this. But of course, now both Mama and I both look back and go, "That's what she was doing! Oh my God!" All those years ago.
Yeah, it makes sense because they say you're really good at something you've done for years. And as a toddler, I don't even remember where it started. I just remember it always was there, and I just loved creating. Like even now when I make products and certain things, or I have projects or I'm doing something and I'm making hair pieces, I just love working with my hands and using my imagination to create things.
Was wearing Big Mama's wigs part of that?
I used to love to put my grandmother's wigs on. It was just, I would go put on her wigs and I'd get in the mirror and I'd be like posing. I think other little girls, especially with, I used to have plaits all the time, like braids. I wanted to throw some hair. I wanted hair to flow. I wanted to move. And so I would put the wigs on and it was like, ooh, because my hair didn't do that on a normal basis. So I was like, ooh, this is fun.
Nice. When did you know you were good at doing hair? We talk about how wearing good hair brings you confidence. But when did you know that you were like, "Ooh, I'm good at this"?
I don't know. It's weird enough. I'm always searching to improve and be better. Always. I don't take it for granted. People say it helps. But I think, I guess there's like I set a goal. And once I reach the goal, I feel like, okay, there's something there. Like I think of my first couple competitions that I did and I won, and it took me a minute to win. I didn't understand how to, I wasn't winning at first in hair competitions. But I think when I won my first couple of competitions, then I was like, okay, maybe that,
Nice.
yes. Listen, every time I get hired or someone reaches out, and it makes me feel like, okay, I must be doing something right.
That's a vote
But I
of
never think
confidence.
of it like, oh, I'm so good, I'm so great. I think that I love what I do. Um, I prepare. I don't just do it. I think about it. I put a lot into it, and I prepare for it. And it's rewarding when someone likes it because I know the work that goes behind, you know, getting prepared for it. Whether it's a music video, whether it's a photo shoot, whether it's a movie. I put a lot of work into the preparation of what I'm about to do. I take it very seriously, maybe probably more serious than some of my clients want me to take it. But they're like, oh, you're a little bit obsessive here. But it's just that, no, I take it serious. I want this to be great. I want it to be good. And I think the reward is that it is, if I get a good response for it, that's the reward.
Nice. Was the entertainment industry always a goal, or did you just discover it along the way as a possibility? Like, did you know? Mama talks about, like,
Yeah.
she didn't know that that was a career. Like,
Right.
Growing up in Chicago,
Yeah.
you didn't know that people could actually make a career out of that. So did you know,
Yeah.
or
I thought when people were on TV, they just showed up with their hair cute. You know what I mean? Didn't realize that there was someone behind them creating that look and the work that went into that. I heard about it through my mother. My mother moved from Chicago to California to work with this woman who she heard about, Ann Wallington, who was probably one of the first few black people in local 706 union doing hair for film. She was working with like Richard Pryor and different people like that. My mother worked in her salon, and she knew her, and she knew about what she did. And so my mother would, once I started doing hair and doing, getting into doing hair, she told me about it. And she said, you want to get in this union, blah, blah, blah. So when I got to doing hair, that was not my end goal, but it was always in the back of my mind that, I would love this opportunity, really, because my mother was kind of putting that seed out there, putting that seed in me, and I was like, I would like this opportunity, to do something. But I actually loved working in salon. I love doing hair for hair shows, and I love doing hair presentations. I love the whole,
production and
yeah, I love the whole
creativity?
production of that. Because, when I would do hair shows, not only did I create the hair, but I would also work in the production side of producing my presentation, the clothes, the makeup, all this stuff. So I knew about it, but it wasn't like my goal at
Out of all the jobs you've had in life, what was your favorite?
first.
Well, you didn't come right out of cosmetology school, get your license, and open your own salon. You worked on the Shaw early on, right?
Yeah, I worked on the barber I used to work with. It was called the Chocolate Strip. That's what he called it. He was a very interesting person, but but a blessing. He has no idea what a blessing he was when I met him. I was coming out of beauty college, and I was very scared to work in the salon because he had booth rental salons, and that means you got to come up with that rent every month. And I had a few clients that I had in beauty college, but most of the clients in beauty college kind of stays at the beauty college because it's very inexpensive, to get your hair done there. And I had a few clients here and there, but not enough to like really start like a career. But I had, he used to come around to the beauty college. He was a funny barber. He was always talking and doing
What was
all
his
this
name?
stuff. Rodney Brimberry. And he was just really big, like a loud personality, talking a lot. He would come to the beauty college and he would see us there. And one day, I was going to interview at different hair salons. So at the time, there were a few big salons in California. I said, I want to go work there. I always wanted, to aim high. I'm going to work for these hair salons, because they train you.
You were thinking like Jose Hebert and Vidal
Yeah,
Sassoon.
yeah, because at the time it was John Atchison and Simply Raw. Raw was the big thing back then with the names of these salons, and so and in the '90s, that was kind of the thing. And there was a few salons, so I want to go work there and I want to learn, and but these were like commission based salons, so you don't have to worry about paying rent. You just get you get a salary, and I thought that was a great way for me to start. Interesting enough, that's not the way it started. They all turned me down. They all were like, no, reject, reject, reject. And I was like, dang, I was so low. And I was at the beauty college and I was, kind of sad because I was like, dang, I didn't get the places. And Rodney was like, well, what's going on? I explained to him and he said, why don't you come work in my barbershop?
Now, this is on Crenshaw.
On Crenshaw. So I went to the beauty college, Lamert Universal Beauty College, which was right around the corner. Lamert is a neighborhood right off of Crenshaw. And he said, well, come work in my salon. And I was like, my barbershop. I'm like, it's a barbershop. I, spent all this years learning how to do hair. I don't want to work in a barbershop, but I took it because it was what was in front of me at the time. I had been rejected at all the other places, but turns out to be the biggest blessing of my life. It's interesting enough. It was definitely a lesson learned for me. So he had like a little space upstairs where there was another hairdresser working up there. So I worked up there with her, and as I was in the barbershop, and I'm thinking, how am I going to get clients in a barbershop? And interesting how it worked out. So I started working there, and he started also teaching me how to cut hair while I was there. So I learned how to barber while I was in there. But, he would send me clients, and pretty much I never went to barber college, but he was so gutsy. He would like send people up there. Oh, she can cut your hair. And the guys would be looking like, and they would do it, which was crazy. They would sit in my chair. It's like, you see somebody swim, you throw them out in the water and see the baby and see if the baby swims. That's kind of what I did. He just threw him in, showed me a little bit, threw him in my chair, and I was cutting hair. Interesting enough, some of those guys would be like, that they would see me doing a little bit of hair. Oh, I'm going to send my wife to you. I'm going to send my mom to you. Oh, I'm going to send my niece to you. I'm going to send my girlfriend to you. I'm going to send my aunt to you. And I built a big clientele in that salon right off of that. But the biggest blessing out of this whole situation was as I was there working in the salon, this was like right during the Rodney King riot and everything. The salon had got burnt down, and then we moved down the street, and we'd been through all of that. And, I'm in there working, and I overhear someone talking about, our West Angeles church was a big church that was not too far from there, and Rodney used to cut the pastor there, and a lot of the church members came to this particular barbershop. And so I overhear them talking about a play that they're doing, and it was a Robert Townsend production. Harry Lennox was the director, and they were doing a theater version of the Five Heartbeats for the church, and they were raising money to build another church. And so they were looking for people to come and volunteer to work on the play. And I was like, I wonder if they need hair people. So I overheard them say this in the barbershop. They were talking about it. And so I inquired, and I went down there, and I, signed up to see if I can get the opportunity to do the hair for the play. Because I thought, this could be an interesting way into working in theater. I mean, even though it was theater production, but to see if I even like this, you know what I mean?
And it was kind of an extension of your hair show, live hair.
Exactly. It was an extension of hair show because it was live. And so, and I also knew Robert Townsend had done a few movies. I loved Five Heartbeats. Was one of my favorite films of his that he's done. And he was doing, really well at the time. And so I volunteered, got the job. I think I may have been the only person to volunteer to do hair, but I got the opportunity. And there it was. I was working in a stage play with, producers and directors that, were in the industry.
And you were doing period hair.
And the hair was period, because Five Heartbeats was it was kind of like a take on Motown and, the whole, and I loved that era. I loved the afros and the big, hairstyles. And I loved playing with wigs because I used to do that in hair shows. So I was very comfortable with wigs. So I got all these wigs and we were styling it, and I had a team of people. And so I would work at the salon during the day, push my clients, some of them to the weekend, and, volunteer, because it was all free. I didn't get paid to do this, but I actually enjoyed it. It was challenging. It was fun for me. I love period hair. And so this was a great opportunity to see. I said, you know what, I may really want to do this. And so, his assistant made the mistake of giving me her phone number.
Whose assistant made
Robert Townsend's assistant gave me her phone number. And I kept in touch with her because I was like, I would really love an opportunity to work on one of, Robert's films. I said, this could be an in. And of course, my mom was in the background saying, hire my daughter. When you hire my daughter, I was like, quiet, don't do that. But it was interesting enough. Again, I had reached out to his assistant, and they would be like, we have a person, but, don't call us, we'll call you, kind of thing. And then, a couple months would go by, and I'd reach out to her again. Hey, is there any opportunities? I would hear, oh, he's doing a movie or something. He got something, I would kind of reach out to her and say, hey, do you have anything? And she said, no, but I may know somebody who can help you or give you some advice. And, I'll ask her, a person that they work with that I think that did makeup, to help, because it was a union thing. You have to be in a union. You can't just walk and work on a set. You got to be a union hairdresser to do this. And so, she was trying to kind of find out a little bit, but they're busy doing stuff. And I would, so I think a year went by, right? I opened up my own salon at this time.
And you continued to do hair shows and
I was still doing hair shows and fantasy competitions, and even becoming a platform artist myself, doing hair for that and presentations. And then I get a call out of the blue from Robert Townsend's assistant. Her name was Charlie Jordan. And she goes, would you happen to have any or know anybody who does avant-garde hairstyles? Or do you do avant-garde hairstyles? And interesting enough, I had been spending a year doing fantasy hair competitions, winning fantasy hair competitions, Hair Wars, Warner Brothers, Proud Lady. Those were like the shows back then. And I said, yeah. She said, well, can you send me some photos of some of the work that you've done? So I met with her, and I had taken pictures of my work. So I had pictures of these real avant-garde, creative hairstyles.
Including the helicopter?
And the helicopter, which I won that in Hair Wars. They used to do this competition, helicopter. It's kind of like a helicopter, so the hair looked like a helicopter. Mine spinned, and it had lights on it, and it was like crazy, And so I sent her those pictures, and then next thing you know, she goes, okay, well, let me show them to Robert, and I'll get back to you. And then didn't hear anything for a few days, and then I get a call back, and I meet with him, and she says, bring the pictures so he can see them in person. And so he came and looked at the pictures in person. He asked me a bunch of questions. He was asking me, like, what time does your salon open? When is it busy? Really odd questions, and I couldn't understand why. And he told me to take pictures, make copies of these photos and have them, there. It's okay. And so I get a call, a couple of days later, and he's like, I'm stopping by the salon. I said, okay. And so he comes by the salon.
He called the same day?
No, like a couple days later.
Okay.
A couple of days later, I'm going to come by the salon. It's okay. He comes by the salon. I don't know why, but he comes by. Maybe he's going to come look at the pictures. Fine. He comes in and walks in with Halle Berry. Now, this was pre-celebrity hairstylist Kim Kimble. There was no celebrities coming in the salon. I think the only celebrity I ever worked with at the time was Wesley Snipes, and he came in the barbershop, and I gave him, because I was doing manicures and pedicures, anything I need to do to pay the rent. So he came in and got a manicure. That was it for me. And
I think you did Cheryl Lynn also, but
not yet. That was years later.
okay.
So then he walks in with Halle Berry. My mouth is open. My client's mouth is open. We were like, and he shows her the pictures. I pull the pictures out and he has me show them to her. And then he took this picture, that picture, this picture, and then he says, send that to me. Still doesn't say anything. He just looks at the pictures. He comes by the salon, brings Halle Berry, and I'm almost like, what in the world? Very interesting, right? So then I get a call, a couple of, maybe, he still didn't say much. He didn't say what he was doing or anything like that. He just wanted to see what I had. Didn't even know I was going to be considered to do anything. But I get a call like about a week or so later from a producer. At the time, her name was Laretha Jones. She was his producer. And she said, we would love to see if you would like to work on this film that we're doing. The movie is called B.A.P.S. It's just called Black American Princess. And I said, well, let me check my schedule. But like, I'm busy in my salon, you know what I mean? I said, well, yeah, one of the things I want to do, I said, yeah, I'll do it, but I want to make sure that I am in the union. I wanted, because I knew about the union and I knew to ask. And that was one of my deal negotiations. I didn't care what the money was. I just wanted that union opportunity. And the rest is history. B.A.P.S. was the first film that I worked on, and I got into the union on that film. They made sure that I was Taft-Hartley in the union, and that was the start. And the interesting thing is, had I went to work at John Atchison, had I went to work with Simply Raw, I may not have gotten that opportunity, because it was in the barbershop that I was working in is where I overheard the conversation and met the people that got me that opportunity to meet Robert Townsend and his. It's just an interesting way that it happened. I didn't have a person that could help me get in. I didn't know anything about film and television. I didn't have any connections there. Other than that opportunity, I volunteered to work at this church to help raise money for the church for free. Was going to lead to my biggest opportunity in working in television and film. And so the rest was history. After that, I went and worked with Robert Townsend on his TV show called The Parenthood. So they hired me to come and work on that. And then also Carmen Jones, which was a movie they did for MTV Hip Hopper, which is where I met Beyonce Knowles.
Okay, you're getting way ahead of me, because I want to ask you some other questions about.
Okay, all right.
Well, when you did B.A.P.S, did you get to design those hair pieces, or did somebody else tell you how to design those pictures? Or
interesting enough, the pictures that I showed Robert of things that I have created is what he wanted. He said, what I did was had to recreate the hairstyles that I had done previously in hair shows, very similar, and which was cool for me. But the thing was, it's different because I was doing this, and a lot of times when I'm creating hairstyles for fashion or for hair shows, I make a bunch of pieces and I put them together and I sculpt them however I want to see them put together, right? But for a film, it was different because the challenge was, okay, so now I need one for the actress, I need one for the stunt double, I need one for the stand-in, for height and width. I learned all that all in one, my very first opportunity. Okay, we got to create this. So I had to make multiple pieces. Then the next challenge was, okay, so because the hairstyles were like these really big, tall, panels of hair with lights and crazy and diamonds and all this stuff on them. But he said, I want a scene where they've been outside in the video sweating all day and dancing, and I want the hair to fall. So I had to recreate the look and then make it fall down, like make it look like it's been warped now, because his hair usually stands out. It's like a fan, That's the best way to describe it. And then now it's like, limp, because of the comedy of it all. The hair is deflated now after they've been out all day in the sun auditioning to be in this music video with this crazy hair, which no one else has. It was a lot of comedy in this whole film. And so just in that first opportunity, I learned, okay, this is a different thing.
Good.
I'm creating this same look for different purposes. And, so I got thrown into it quickly. But I knew then, I said, oh, I love this. To me, it's like another production. It's like another hair show or event like that. It's like, okay, but now I'm working with, I'm working with a budget, and I got, help, because that's not just me. I have a team, and it's a whole different thing. Because usually when I do my own shows, I have all that, but I'm footing the bill for everything.
Right. Right.
This is like, oh, someone else is, paying for this, so I get the top of the line, this, that, and then I'm working with a fantastic costume designer, which was Ruth Carter, who was an amazing costume designer.
Academy Award winning
costume designer. And that was, so that's the first person I got to work with is somebody like that, another woman of color who is, had been done, big things. And this was a great opportunity.
This was your first film, or anything that is film and television related.
Yes.
How did you know how to be a professional as opposed to working? I mean, you're a professional working in a salon. You're a professional working in a barbershop. As you become more experienced, we learn on the job. How did you know how to be a professional on a movie set?
Okay, so by this being my first film, and I like sometimes, people have mentors that they can work up under and learn. And, because I've been a mentor now to some people, and that, which is a great way to learn. I didn't have that.
Right.
I kind of got into this job, and so there was a makeup artist, her name was Lalette Littlejohn, who, because sometimes everybody's not happy for you to come in. They don't like new people. They don't understand, how did you get that job? And they didn't get that job. Early on, it was very difficult for me to find a mentor, a hairstylist mentor to show me. So some people call it the fake it till you make it thing, but it was kind of that, but not really, because by the time I got on this film, and it's very related to like having a salon and running a business. Working as a hairstylist on a film and television, it's not even just about doing hair, right? You have to manage a budget, you have to manage a team, you have to manage talent and schedule and keep time. And I'm a quick study. I learned and I paid attention, asked questions, and I listened to, a lot of the makeup artists, interesting enough, was more helpful to me than the hair people. You know what I mean? They would help me and tell me things, and I picked it up quick, and I paid attention and I listened because I wanted to do well. I didn't want to fail at this. And I was blessed to have somebody like Lalette, she didn't have no problem telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that. This, explaining to me, because there's a whole nother system in working on film. You step up on a trailer, you stepping up. So, because while people are doing makeup, the trailers are rocking and moving, just certain things, how to fill out a time card, how to do that, which is, I had been a salon hairstylist.
Right.
And I'd worked on productions of hair shows, which is a completely different entity altogether, right? So having, people like that look out for you and help you. And there was like a few hairstylists, but B.A.P.S was really, I was kind of like more, the hairstylist that was there really wasn't as mentoring as I would have liked her to be,
Were you...
But I was also busy making hair pieces all the time.
So you had like a consultant credit. You weren't...
Yeah, I wasn't a department head, no. I was kind of like a hair assistant or a consultant because I wasn't quite union yet either. So I was doing the work and doing the styling on, especially on one of the main talent, which was Natalie Desselle. And Halle Berry had her own personal hair person, so I was really designing the pieces and giving them to her, so she had her person put them on her. Because I was at the time I was the expert in that type of hair, which was great because it got me the opportunity. Because they needed to find someone that could do that hair,
Right.
and that's what I did. I was doing fantasy hair already, and so and that's what he was looking for, something like that.
You mentioned Natalie Desselle, and so when you work on film or television, it's a very close, intimate relationship with the talent, the actors, and tell us a little bit about working with Natalie. I just remember Booyah. That's
Yeah.
my favorite.
So the interesting thing, Natalie had done a film right before that, but this was her first big kind of like starring role opportunity. So it was a first for me and a first for her, and I think we bonded really quickly. Because at first she wanted another hairstylist. She didn't want me to do it. She wanted somebody else. Because of course, anybody who has somebody that they work with, she wanted her hairdresser to get that opportunity. Because he did creative hair too. So it was at a point, it was a battle between who was going to, it was a time where it was in jeopardy that I might not get the opportunity because she was fighting so hard for him. What made the difference, because she was like, oh, I want my person to do me for this film, because she's like, when she likes you, she fights hard for you to come. And it was a point where I thought I might not get it because she wants him, and he also can do, he was from Detroit, he could do all that creative hair as well. The difference was, to work on a film and to be in the union, you have to be a licensed hairdresser from California. He was not, and I was. And so that was the determining factor. Oh, she's going to get that opportunity because, I think at first he wanted me, but when Natalie got in the picture, she wanted him, her other hairstylist, to do it. And, it didn't work out. He couldn't consider it because, you have to be a licensed hairdresser in the state of California to work. And he was from Detroit, so he didn't have a license to work here. So,
good for you.
yeah, listen, that's why I always tell people, hairstylists, get your license, get the paperwork that you need so that you can, you don't have a missed opportunity.
Nice.
Right. So that's what secured it. But then quickly we became close, Natalie, on the film. And then I became her hairstylist after that. I worked with her on, numerous things, and she became a client and a friend, my son's godmother. We would, because I think we bonded because this was both our first big opportunity, and,
Nice. How did those hairstyles, I'm gonna ask this and we're gonna move to TV, okay? How did those fantasy, wild hairstyles for B.A.P.S help those actresses get into character? Could you see the difference?
Oh, I could definitely see the difference. Because one thing about hair and makeup and clothes, it sells you on it sells you, it gives you visualize it. And I feel that when actors get the hair and the makeup and the clothes, they start to morph. It helps them get into character. It's definitely a necessary thing, in the business. It's very necessary because I feel like it just helps them do their thing, They're talented, but it's something about you put an old gray wig on and you start talking and acting like an old, you know what I mean? What you think an old person is, You start morphing in and getting into that character. So I really feel like, I think it really, because, Halle Berry is this glamorous, beautiful, actress woman, but to see her with gold teeth and then she put this crazy hair on. Now she's from Georgia and she got this hood hair going on, and it kind of, it helps bring it all together.
Nice. Very.
How close are you to your hairstylist / barber?
You were establishing an ongoing relationship with Robert Townsend. And so how did you get over on The Parenthood, which ran on the WB from 1995 to 1999?
Well, the makeup artist also to Lalette Littlejohn, who worked on that, who had helped me. She's like, oh, I think she'd be good to come work on the Parenthood with us. And so she kind of, talked with Laretha and, Robert, and got me, an opportunity to work on that. So it was great. Great show. My first experience with television. Now, I wasn't the department head. I was the key person. I worked up under the department head.
What's the difference between a department head and a key?
Yeah. Department head is the person who runs the whole show, and the key is the person that kind of supports them and works up under them. They're kind of like the second in command. So I was, at the time, key, and I worked under Frank. God, I can't remember his last name. Oops. I worked under Frank as his, key in support of what he does.
Did you get to do everybody's hair, or just Suzanne Douglas and Reagan Gomez, or?
I got to work with a lot of people. I did most of the women. I did Reagan Gomez. I did Suzanne Douglas. And then there's a lot of guest people who came on there, and I worked with them a lot as well.
Very nice. What was different about working on a television show than a feature film?
Mm-hmm. There is a difference in working on television as opposed to feature film. Feature film, you read the script, you break it down, and you have one time of like breaking down a script and planning out this whole what the hair is going to be. On a television show, you do that every episode, every week. You have to read another script, break that down, and and this, at the time, these were live audiences as well. So they would shoot during the week, and then they would do it again for a live audience. So it's like almost like a live show. It's like, they show some of the clip, and then they shoot some of it live, and so that means the hair, you got to be able to be quick with the changes and everything, because everything's live. So you got to know when to change the hair, not when to change it, or don't make it too difficult where you can't change the hair quick.
Where are you? Are you on the set? Are you in a video village? Are you back in a trailer?
Well, I'm in video village watching, and I'm, we start off the day, we're in the hair and makeup room, we get them all ready, and then they go on set, and then I'm there at video village watching, running in, touching up their hair when need be. So even with a live audience, you can, when they stop, you can go in and touch up the hair.
Okay.
Because they have, of course, breaks where you can do that.
Okay. And do people call you, or you just know to run out there and do it?
A lot of times I'm watching. I like to watch for myself, and I can see when something, or sometimes the director will say, hey, there's a piece of hair in the way, or a makeup artist say, oh, did you see there was a little something going on right here? Listen, sometimes the actress calls for you because they feel like, oh, I think I did something. Mm-hmm. So but someone's always looking.
Someone's always looking. And you have like as a professional, you have a little holster belt that you have with a bunch of tools in it.
Yeah, I am geared up, and I have all my tools on me, my spray, my comb, or they're either set bags or tool. I like a tool belt, and I can work and touch up while I'm right there, because you don't have the luxury of being in the hair and makeup room anymore. They're on set, they're in the middle of it. You got to be able to go out there and fix the hair and have all your stuff. I call it my touch-up kit to touch up their hair. Whatever you use in the room, a lot of times that's what you're going to bring to touch up their hair and make sure they look good.
And that was a daily gig? Was that a 9 to 5, 5 days a week? What is that? Tell me, what is it working on a television show like that, a sitcom? Mm-hmm. What does that production work week look like? Mm-hmm. And what does that look like?
So there's different types of television. At that time,
because you also did the Wayans brothers after.
Yeah, but I wasn't the department head. I just came and worked with other people. So, so when I worked on, so television, there's a couple of different ways. So sitcoms, usually we come in twice a week. They're usually there all week rehearsing and doing things. And then we come in to do a pre-tape, and then they do the live the second day. So really, we're there for 2 days. Sometimes we would come in an extra day if there was something needed, but we really worked only 2 days a week on that show.
And on those other days, are you breaking down the script? Are you?
Yeah, on the other days you break down the script or you're prepping. Really, just one day. You really have one day budgeted for that. Like for me, after a while, for me, once I got in the union, it started moving like rapid fire. Sometimes I'd be doing other shows on other days. At first, I started there, but then I got picked up on Jamie Foxx show. Then I got picked up on Moesha with Brandy, different TV shows. So I would be working 5 days a week, right? But on different shows.
Nice.
So if it worked out schedule wise, and so that's how what I would do after a while. When I first got in, it was just that one, but then quickly I got other opportunities and started working on the other shows
In different positions, like you could
that
do
was
that
one,
if
that
you
became
were.
a department head
Okay.
on most of them, and then I got my first. I think Jamie Foxx is my first department head television show that I worked on, and then but then there's also episodics, which is a different kind of TV where you work. It takes them. These are more like your dramas and your drama TV shows or now there's more and more of them now with streaming episodics, but they shoot 7 to 8 days for an episode.
Right.
And also too, like when we would do stuff like pilots, because that was another thing. After that, I started doing a lot of pilots too. When they're creating new shows and they shoot pilots, that sometimes would take 7 or 8 days because they use that time to really perfect this show because they're selling it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you, two questions. I want to ask you about the Wayans brothers, and then I want to ask you about being a department head. So the Wayans brothers, is that where some of your barbering skills came into play, or working on men's hair? There's a big difference between working on men's hair and working on women's hair.
Yeah, it is a big difference. I didn't do a lot of the men. I didn't bring I did bring my barbering skills a little bit on television, but I mostly would do the women.
Okay.
And actually, Wayans brother was a friend of mine, Linda Villabosa. She's a long time Wayans brothers, their hair person, and I came and worked with her on a couple of episodes. I was like an assistant hair person for her on that one.
Nice. When you are the department head, do you have to do individual talents hair also, or do you just kind of wave the baton and manage everybody else? Because you were department head on the Jamie Foxx show, but I think you also had to do Garcelle Beauvais' hair.
Yeah. As a department head, you have to multitask. So I'm doing people's hair and I'm managing the show. So I'm doing both. And if you have a great team, you kind of help divide it. Most department heads do the lead people, so they do the main lead cast a lot of times. But it all depends. At the time, Jamie had his own barber, so he had his barber come on for him, and so
How did you and Garcelle hook up?
Garcelle Beauvais was the lead woman on there, and of course, as I got on there, I kind of she was one of the main people I came to do her hair on, and
was she receptive, or did she?
Yeah, she was super nice and very lovely, and still that's another long. I just did her hair not that long ago. She's on Beverly Hills Housewives, which is now, at the time, reality TV really wasn't a thing then. It's a thing now, and she's on a reality show, as well as she still does films and television, but she's on the Housewives franchise. And I just worked with her on a shoot with her and her son. Her son is modeling as well, and so that was the whole storyline of that. But it's great, we formed a great relationship. She became a client, so I also would do her in the salon as well. After I met her, she would come to the salon and get her hair done, as well as have me do her on the show.
When you get to work with somebody like Garcelle, do you have conversations with the producer or show creators, showrunners about how her hair should look for the show, or do you work with the talent to come up with what's the right hair for this character?
I say that it's a lot of different things when you are doing a talent for a show. You have them collaborating, you have directors, you have producers They all weigh in on, and sometimes even networks at, executives at networks, high level producers, who have an idea of what they want that hair to look like. In film and television, it's always a collaboration with many different people. But sometimes for me, a lot of times it depends on who it is. Sometimes it's just with the talent. Me and the talent are, coming up with what they want. So there's different scenarios of it.
Have there been circumstances where, like, the showrunner and the network and the talent and you didn't all agree?
There's been many times where everybody did not agree when it comes to the hair. But usually, I mean, this is the thing. The most powerful one is the one that wins, okay? Whether it's the talent, if it's a big talent, or the director, or a big director, or a big producer, or, I guess I was probably the boss, the one that's paying the bills, or the one that's really powerful, or the one that's going to get the final say on what happens.
But it is important for the actor, the performer.
But a lot of people, but most producers want the actors to be happy and feel comfortable so they can perform and do what they do. It's important. That's why it's important. That's why people have personals, because you have personals where the talent is star requesting a person, and a lot of times it's who they're comfortable with. Because some people have special needs when it comes to their hair. Some people just want they have a comfort level of with somebody. There's many reasons, but then you also have department heads, and you have different players and on a set when it comes to doing hair.
But that hair is part of developing the character.
Yeah, and the hair is definitely part of developing the character, so it's important. For me, I consider myself not only a hairstylist, but a hair designer,
Hair artist,
coordinator, all these things, for my clients. Even, it's interesting enough, even after I'd done a couple of films and television, I think it developed me also when I started getting into more, after I worked with Brandy on Moesha and Beyonce on Carmen Jones, I started working with more music artists, because at the time a lot of music artists were in television and film. So even when I would work with them on their projects, like their album packagings or their, big productions like Beyonce Coachella or Lemonade, I treated it like a film production because I had come from working on productions. So as I set up my teams and how I manage the whole process, I'll do more for them than they probably would have required before. Because I'm like, I can manage the whole team. I can bring a team of people in to do this and do that. Oh, we need a test. We need to do this. Because for film, you get a camera test so you can see how it looks. I like the structure of what television and film does for the industry, because when you take that other places, because other places don't always have that same structure, right? Because it's freelance, it's like this. When you're talking about millions of dollars, you need structure, you need planning, you need
efficiency,
you need all those things. And I'm so happy because most people, it's the opposite. They start in freelance and then they move into television and film. I started in television and film, and I moved more into freelance.
Nice.
But I like it that way because I feel like there's certain structure and things in working in film and television that I took with me to freelance that helps me, and it gives me the ability to do more for my client. So like, for example, when I work with somebody like Beyonce and she does a Lemonade, which is really a visual album, which was a new thing, but it was set up like a production. We even got nominated for an Emmy for it. You know what I mean? It was not just a video; it was an actual production, and I had no problem morphing into managing the hair for that type of a project. You know what I mean?
I think it's. I'm really learning a lot about your process and the different talent that you work with, and you go from actresses or actors, and then you move into these hyphenate performers, right? So singer, actress kind of thing. So you had this with Moesha. You had this with Brandy Norwood. where Brandy is a singer, and so you would have a chance to do photo shoots and album cover kinds of things and music videos. But then you also work with Brandy on Cinderella or the Moesha Show. And then you would be able to repeat that with Beyonce, and then you would repeat that with Mary J. Blige. Talk a little bit about and however you want to mix that up and bounce around. I'm okay with that. If you're okay with that, you have these hyphenate talents, right? They are actresses, but they're also singers, and so you are required to be able to be flexible to work with them with whatever kind of production they're doing. So, for example, on Cinderella, that experience with Brandy must have been different than working with Brandy on Moesha.
Because that was a musical too.
Yeah. Okay. So talk a little bit about how you have to switch, as a professional working in television, because one's a television film and one is a television show. What kind of gymnastics do you have to do in your head to be able to know, okay, I have to work in this kind of structure for this, but I have to have that kind of structure for that. And then how do you bring your team along? Or do you have to switch different teams to work in those different kinds of productions?
Well, when you're working in all different, I call them genres, different kind of genres. So you have television, you've got film, you've got musicals, you've got theater, you've got music videos.
You got commercials.
You've got photo shoots. And
red carpets.
You have red carpets.
Live productions.
So I have been blessed to work in all of these capacities, right? But one thing I understood is that each genre has its own way of doing things, right? So for example, when it comes to working on a film and television, I understand that, okay, this is character building here. We're creating a character. So in my mind, this is about creating a character, right? When I work with a music artist for a music video, it's about creating a brand and an image and a persona, right? So that's a whole nother way of styling hair. So I have to turn my mind off on that, turn it on a different lane over here. Then commercial, it might be something different. Stage performance, well, we know, okay, stage performers like big, right? Because they've got people sitting stands and the nosebleeds need to see them. They need to be seen, whether it's their color is bright, whether their hair is big. That's why a lot of big entertainers have big hair.
Spectacle.
It's a spectacle, right? So you have all these different things. And so I remember for example, if I'm doing a film, and this is one thing I will say that irritates me sometimes when I understand why they say it, but like some, directors or producers, their mind doesn't think that you know how to turn things on and off. So if they find out, oh, she works with Beyonce. Well, we don't want this big glamorous hair. I know that if I'm working with a woman who's playing a maid, I know her hair needs to look like a maid. It doesn't need to look like a Beyonce walking in with a duster. You know what I mean? So it's like, but they go, well, we don't want that. I mean, there's a job that I didn't get because they thought, oh, you don't know how to tone people down. I said, I did film before I did that, right? Listen, if you look at my work, it goes, okay, B.A.P.S, one thing, then you have Jamie Foxx show, another thing, then you have, now honestly, I don't always take films that doesn't challenge me creatively, really. If you look of a history, it's either a period piece, but I know 1960s hair, but there's different versions of 1960s. We did Dreamgirls. Those girls were entertainers. So that's a different kind of 60s from a woman who's working in a library. You know what I mean?
Which is like Betty and Coretta.
Exactly, which I did Betty and Coretta. And that's actually duplicating. Now you also, one thing which I love to do as well, I love to do period, but I also love to do when we're actually recreating a person like a Coretta Scott. I like the challenge of trying to make them look the same. Of what their original, and I like to research and study like period and history and things like that. So like, for example, when I worked on Wrinkle in Time, and thank God I had my hair show experience because the director wanted Ava, in this movie, it's modern day and then it's women from the universe, which because I love to, like when I do like a period piece, like I can research and I can find, what women hair look like as entertainers, like Motown. You got plenty of references for that.
Right.
I didn't have a reference for a woman from the universe, like a fantasy character who didn't exist.
Right.
But okay, so I had to get inspiration from somewhere. So so this is where the creative part kicked in. Oh, I'm gonna create some looks that what I could imagine what this looked like.
And that was Oprah and
Oprah, Mindy Kaling, and Reese Witherspoon. They were these sort of like beings that were from the universe in this movie. It was a famous book, Wrinkle in Time. And, and I saw what they had done in previous movies, but the director, she wanted something a little more out there. She wanted that creativity. She wanted to see something. And because I didn't have a reference of that, that was an interesting way to kind of do it. But because I had that background hair shows and creating, most of that stuff was out of somewhere other world anyway, so I was very comfortable with that. So I would look for references from sci-fi different things that I could imagine, to get inspiration to pull from for these women. And then we started, and so trying to communicate that with a director is difficult but we were able to do it. So I find photos of sci-fi things and say, well, do you like this kind of, so I can know how far can we take this? How, normal do you want it to be? And so the pictures really helped, and we went through a lot of photos, right? To find those things. And she wanted their hair to change every planet they went to. So like every planet, their hair morphed into another hairstyle. That was the idea. So I'm doing all these different sci-fi things for 3 women 4 times, right? So, but I like the challenge. I was very excited, and I enjoyed actually that whole thing.
Do you find television provides you that creativity that you just mentioned? It sounds really fantastic, and it sounds like there's a lot of pressure that goes along with that. Is there a way that the consistency of television gives you an opportunity to the repetition? Does it give you a chance to kind of hone something that you would have created, or build on something that you would have started, and you don't have a lot of switching? Because so for example, when you work on something like the Jamie Foxx show or Moesha or the Parkers, those characters are set. They're established by the showrunner or the show creators, sometimes the actors, definitely sometimes the network. And so you come in to help express that character on everything that you do. But because we're seeing that character all the time, episode after episode, there's a consistency, a routineness.
Yes.
That goes along with that hair.
Yes. It depends, though. It depends on the film. I mean, it depends on the TV show, and it depends on how this. But this is the thing. Interesting enough, yeah, their hair is kind of set, but there's things that they write in there. They may be like, oh, her hair is flying in the wind, and so you have to kind of come up with something to make it look like it's flying. This is an example. But there's a Halloween episode, so now we're doing characters or whatever. I think that it is very consistent for most TV things, right? There's a consistent look there. There may be opportunities to do something different. And it depends on the show. Maybe it's a show that's more out there, TV show. It really just depends on what it is. It's different in every scenario,
Do you like working on pilots? You did the Bernie Mac show. You did the Hewley's pilot. Do you like working on pilots?
I like working on pilots because you establish. I like to be the establishing hairstylist on the show. I love creating. For me, the fun part is the figuring it out, creating what we're gonna do. What's the look gonna be?
And you collaborate sometimes with the actor.
And I love collaborating with the actors, the costume, the makeup, and the producers and directors, whoever. Like I love, like with Euphoria, perfect example. I know I'm skipping ahead, but I really liked working with Sam because I felt like his mind was, even though it's a television show that wasn't really hair creative, but he definitely had opportunities where it would challenge me enough to, his mind would go, I want this, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I loved working with, a director like him because he's a visionary and he has great vision. And I feel like, some people you work with, you feel like, oh, we have good like vision, like we kind of work well together in that way. So that's why a lot of times I like to work with the same people over and over again, like directors or producers or talent actresses. I love when a client is like, oh yeah, let's do this, and they give me. I love a challenge. I love them to say, like, for example, when I work with Beyonce on stuff. Well, when we did Dreamgirls, right? I know I'm supposed to be talking about TV stuff.
It's
but I
okay.
keep going to film.
I'll come back to it. Keep going.
She was like, oh, I did like probably 50 looks in that movie. 50 wigs had to be styled for that, Or when we're doing a project and she goes, oh, I want 30-inch braids. I want, I like the crazier it is, the more I like, yes, let's do this.
Well,
I thrive on that. I like it. I like a challenge and I like to be busy and I like to stay, creative, but everything's not like that. Sometimes, it's good to maybe not have the stress up trying to pile on all that work. So I like
challenge, but sometimes you like calm.
sometimes I do like calm. I do.
Well, in talking about the different ways you can work in television, because just in listening to you, there's so many different ways you can actually work in television, right? So you have these moments where you have to do character building, something like Carmen, the hip opera, or even Cinderella.
Yeah, Cinderella was more creative. It was a reimagined version of Cinderella. I love that kind of stuff.
But then when you do Lemonade, which is a visual album, which is for a cable outlet as opposed to a legacy network, you're doing creative work there also.
Oh yeah, that was creative. It's a visual album, which had never been done before. But it was like music videos created and kind of somehow brought together. So it's always different things. Sometimes there's characters in videos. You get characters and things like that you can do. I think in every genre there is a place or opportunity for some creativity.
Can you talk a little bit more about your process for the visual album
Which genre do you feel holds the most creativity?
Lemonade? Talk you get a call from Beyonce. Yo, Kim, I'm working on this. I'm doing this thing, and we're gonna have all these different scenarios and characters. Help me out here. Tell me, take us through that process.
My process, whether it's a film, television, or a video project or something of that nature, what I'll do is I like to create. Back in the day, I used to tear up magazines. I was a magazine bandit. I would take people's magazine, I see something, tearing it, and I like to create like a board, vision boards. I would start with vision boards, right? And I would to give me inspiration, and because a lot of times that's how I can communicate too. I like this, but with this, and maybe this is the color, and then we have this. So I like doing vision boards. Some people can draw and sketch. I'm okay with the drawing, but magazines became my thing. Now, as things progress, we have Pinterest boards. So, like, I love researching and doing things on Pinterest boards and stuff like that. It just made it a little easier. I don't have to tear all that paper up do that anymore.
Still tearing up paper,
but and then testing out things and So I like to pull inspirations from different things because I feel like the best way to communicate is to show them visually. Like for me, I'm a visual person. I have to see it kind of in a way to communicate it because it may be hard to explain, So I think that because I also learned that in the salon. When a client comes in, they'd be like, oh, I want this. I don't like miscommunication. I like to ask a lot of questions. I'm one of those people who ask a lot of questions to the point where it might get on their nerves, but it's important because even clients, because I don't like miscommunication. So I learned even in the salon, I would have to show them a picture. You mean like this length, or like this. So they don't go, oh, this was not the length I wanted, or this is not what I want, the color I wanted. So I have color swatches. I have all these tools to help me get that communication. I think in every genre, communication is key. So really getting that communication together and presenting, like a presentation. This is what I present to show you. This is what I think that we should do to get the look that you want, you know. And then I recommend testing. So sometimes there's tests. We don't always get the opportunity to test, but it's great when you can, because then I get a chance to kind of, you know, before things go on, you know, camera, you know what I mean? Before millions of dollars is spent, you know, maybe a little few dollars spent for testing is definitely valuable. So we all kind of have a plan and we know what we're going to do. And that's the process that I like.
With all the different looks that you were able to do for Lemonade or Black is King, do you come up with all of those different looks? Does Beyonce come up with all of those different looks? Do you generate those ideas together?
It's a collaboration. Sometimes she comes up with it. Sometimes I come up with some. She has a creative team too. Sometimes creative directors, because that's one thing I haven't mentioned. Sometimes you're working with creative directors. But before there was creative directors, a lot of times it would be me and her collaborating. But now she has creative directors that have a whole visual for the whole project. It's kind of like another version of a director or producer that's creative in that way. But I do want to say, like, an interesting thing, because you know, I've had worked with Beyonce for a while, so she's kind of established a look, right? But Lemonade was a new kind of thing, and when I got from her what the idea was, like, this, so Antebellum was kind of like, we shot in Louisiana. So Southern Plantation, I imagined what women of color would look like in that time. So I definitely wanted like natural texture. Women from Louisiana, what they kind of look like, that kind of mixed, curly, kinky kind of texture. Creole texture. And then also a little bit of African, because, you know, at the time. So I kind of took a little bit of Africa and a little bit of that Creole and kind of mixed that to kind of come up with a whole overall vision for like the dancers and all that stuff. That was sort of that look for that era. And so you notice Beyonce more and more textured hair in this in that project.
But then how did you work out? What was your inspiration for Black is King?
Well, Black is King was, I didn't do the whole Black is King. I did part of it. It was more like a collaboration from a lot of different hair and makeup people at the time. So that one was, it's African, Lion King, sort of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think the Spirit song was the one I worked on mostly. That was early on in that project. We did,
What happens when you are, when you have to do like hair that's spectacle? So if we're talking about Beyonce singing at President Obama's inauguration or Super Bowl halftime, you know, so how do you know that's on television, but these are live.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about like Super Bowls. I've done like 3 or 4 Super Bowls with her. I did Super Bowl with Shakira. That's a whole nother thing. And it's like a production for us. We have to hire a team. We have to, sit and watch rehearsals and see how the hair. So again, planning, because this is live television. So like, certain people, you get the opportunity to plan and to see the preparation of what's happening. I recommend it, like how the hair is going to move, what they're going to do. So you're not surprised because it is live television.
People think that live television means spontaneous, and actually live television means preparation.
Yeah, I do. It's preparation. And like when she did Coachella, that was another big thing. And there was a whole thing because we have dancers to do.
How many dancers for Formation? How many dancers for Coachella?
God, I don't remember exactly, but
it was
a lot. And I had a team of people, and she would have specific notes, whether it was from her or for her creative director, what she wants. I remember Coachella was very high school drum, the marching band thing, right. And there's a whole culture of that where all the girls have, they look alike when they're performing on that. So that was kind of the theme for all those dancers, but opposed to with Lemonade, it was like, oh, we did different hair looks for each dancer. They had their own creative, like artistic African kind of hairstyle for that. And then, but we have to have a team that's sharp. We have to have a plan because we're putting on hair, taking off hats, moving it live. Like it's like a play. Backstage, you're running and they're trying, they're getting dressed. We're putting on hair wigs and making sure they're secure because they're dancing and throwing them. It is a whole intense and a whole nother thing. You have to be on point.
Especially for the
And
Super Bowl.
like all her stuff is live, but it's also going to be shown again on television. Like Coachella was made on television as well. Was a television production.
You did Shakira and you did Beyonce, so you've done Super Bowls.
I want to say like five or six Super Bowls. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Years ago, first one Beyonce performed with Santana. That was just her performing with Santana. Then she did one in New Orleans, Super Bowl, and then she did one at San Francisco. The one where she did that was different. That was more like they weren't Black Panthers, but they kind of look like black. But they had the black afros and with the beanie hats and all the dancers. So that was a whole nother look. And then there was Shakira's, and then they did. There was Destiny's Child. That was the whole group. So I did a couple of Super Bowls, but those are all televised, live performances, which is a whole nother thing. And like I said, you have to have a good team meetings, explaining this is what has to be done. I would tell them if a hat flies off in rehearsal, you're fired. Like you're not coming back because the sincerity of it, the severity of it is like if it falls off of national television, it's not going to look good. It's going to be not going to look great for anybody.
Right.
So it was like, we had to come up with a plan to make sure these hats get put on during quick changes and then applied and they're not coming off. So again, you have to work with wardrobe to make sure, the hats may need horsehair in them, so we pin them in there and they don't come off, or sew them, whatever we have to do to get the job done. That's what we do.
Nice.
But one of the things I want to talk about on Sense and Sensibility was a film that I recently did, and it was a remake of a classic, romantic film, but it was most of the characters were women of color, and that was another kind of a reimagined hair because.
And again, this is a made-for-television film.
This is a made-for-television film, yes, a Hallmark film.
So it has a feature film shooting schedule.
Yes, but it's feature film, which is a different kind of version. It's like shooting a film, but it's made for television. So it's a different than a sitcom, than an episodic, and then now you have a made for television film. And that one was a little bit challenging too because I did a lot of research in that time. It was the Regency time, and with that you definitely want to be spot on with the hair because you don't want to get clocked for not doing the right period. It messes up the whole thing. You have to really do your research with period pieces, especially, it's easier to find 60s and 70s, because, there was more pictures. Now you got paintings and images and drawings. You don't really have real photos of a lot of that stuff. A lot of it's, so, and you want to get that right. But also, too, they didn't have pictures of women of color.
No.
Back then. And the ones you did find, they had head wraps on, things like that.
They were in the background. They had their heads wrapped, and they were not out in front.
Right, and they were not really, but these are different characters. So I had to reimagine what are women of color hair gonna look like for this, and we know, and so to not take them out of this period, we had to create these looks that had like texture to them because they were we know they weren't relaxing their hair. Relaxer wasn't invented. Pressing combs hadn't been invented yet. So they had to have a lot of texture in their hair. But creating those sculpted looks that they wore, which I love all those. It wasn't quite the Marie Antoinette era. So it wasn't the big hair, but it was a little bit more, but there were specific looks for specific years. And I did a lot of research but the one great thing that we had on the set is we had a person who was, I guess an expert of that time. And she would tell us, no, they didn't roll the hair. They rolled the hair with fabric.
Right.
So when we had to do rollers, it was like fabric roll, certain things, like little things that you need to know. We had a person who also, so I did my research. I also checked with her. Is this right? Is this what would happen? Is this what we would do? Sometimes we take a little creative liberty, but you don't want to do too much of that because you really want it to look like the right period. And that was challenging and very intense for me because there was nothing to really gather.
You didn't have a reference point.
Didn't have a lot of reference.
This is an all-black cast, mostly
Not
black
all
British.
black, but mostly in British.
Black British shot in Bulgaria, right?
Bulgaria and Ireland. Yes, we shot that there. And so, I had to hire a team. A lot of times when you travel, most of the time you get most of your team from that country. So you're working with people in other countries, which is different because some of them don't even have unions, but there are people who are...
Or they may not have any experience working on textured hair.
Right. Experience working on textured hair. So that's why I'm here, for that. But also, the interesting, though, the one thing I do find, though, they're very great with periods because they do a lot of it. It's older countries. They have more history, and they do work really well with period pieces. They sometimes are quite experts in that.
And that was on the Mahogany Channel.
Yes, and I did work with a girl from Bulgaria, and I love what she did with all the guys because we didn't have wigs for them. We couldn't do that, a lot of the wigs. So the way she curled their hair and put the sideburns on, then you see, oh, they do look colonial. Like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because we were like, what are we going to do with the guys? Because we can't, we didn't want to do wigs for them. We didn't want the wiggy looking show. So she did some really cool, curls, she curled the hair really tight and put and they do hair and makeup, some of them, in other countries. Here in the United States, in our union, you have to either do hair or you do makeup. If you're a character makeup artist, you may do wigs, but you don't do anything outside of that. And so in other countries, sometimes they do both, which is interesting that they do,
That's I still need to see that movie. Because I'm very interested in seeing this kind of Regency era.
Yeah, it was actually pretty good. It looked pretty good.
You like that? I know you like
the
that
costumes.
kind of stuff. I know you love that.
The costumes were fantastic. There's hats. There was a lot of hats.
Did you have? You mentioned previously a couple times that budgets sometimes force you to be really creative. Like you didn't have wigs for these guys, so they had to be creative. How do you find that? And you were managing budgets also. How much does that juice your creativity?
Yeah, that's the thing. Budgets are interesting, and I've worked on big budgets and I worked on low budgets. Now, big budgets, it's a lot more to manage, but however, you can be creative because you've got the money to be creative like you want.
Okay.
But it's interesting enough, early on in my career, I worked on some things, a lot of low budget films, which they didn't have the money, and I figured out how to how to make it work. Maybe I don't have my $10,000 wigs. You take wigs that are not $10,000 and make them look.
Beyonce's gold member wig a $10,000 wig?
Oh, gold member wigs were fantastic. They were made by an amazing wig builder. Erwin Kaputz is his name, who was really, really, really popular. And that's how I first, met him. And that was my second project with her. And I was her personal. I was not the department head of this film. So I just worked with Beyonce. I was her personal hairstylist. And a lot of the looks were established when I got there. And, I worked with her because, that department head,
right.
Usually this is what happens. The department head will create and establish the looks for the film. They are the sort of like the overseer of what that that visual is. Sometimes I may have to come in, and there's been films where I've come in on, and because I am doing the star, I set the look for that, and other people have to kind of like work around what that is. So it just really depends. Everything is different, and it's good to be flexible, morph in and out of things. You know, sometimes it's okay. I don't have to think about what to do. You know what I mean? I could just come in and do the hair, and I don't have to, I don't have to rack my brain. Okay, what am I doing? But sometimes I like it too. But I think I'm easy to morph into both.
Do you find that? I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish. What were you going to say?
I just said sometimes it's good to be flexible, I would say.
Do you find working in cable different than working in network? Because you did Being Mary Jane, and you've done the morning show, and that's streaming, and you've done Euphoria, and that's HBO, so that's cable, and then the morning show is streaming, over the top streaming, and then you've got your BET with Being Mary Jane, so that's cable, and then you have your legacy TV. Do you find a difference in how you work across those different kinds of outlets?
Yeah, I do find that now with television, the streaming networks, and how some of their television shows are created, a lot of them are almost, it feels like film, the way they shoot them. Because, when I came in, it was like a lot of sitcoms and TV, a lot of on stage. And not saying some streamings use stages as well. But it feels more like films. A lot of times you're bouncing around, from different locations and things like that. But sitcoms were just a different thing. It's 2 days a week. There's a live audience, and they're more quicker, fast paced. These streaming shows feel more, even though they're like episodics too, but they're more like episodics, really.
Where they're serialized, which means they probably tell the story more like a film than you would on.
They tell the story more like a film. So it feels like you're working. Even though I'm working on a TV show, it feels like I'm working on a film. Because they felt like two different things at one point. Because I didn't do a lot of episodics when I started out. I was more into sitcoms, and then I went right into films. And I wouldn't do the episodics because they're like 10 months. You know what I mean? I ain't want to be stuck somewhere for that long. I just, I like to change up. I'm one of those people who like to move around and do different things. But the television streaming shows are more like episodics. The difference is they don't have 20, 30 episodes anymore. It's like 8 to 10 episodes. So they're a lot shorter. It's like, again, it's getting closer to like a film almost.
But those are also 5-day shoots.
Those are 6 days. Sometimes it depends. They're more 6 to 7 days to shoot one episode.
14-hour days and
they're
locations.
They're long hours. The one thing about television, the hours were like more predictable. You're going to be here at this time every week. Every day, and then we're going to be wrapped by a certain time. But sometimes we go over a little bit. But for the most part, you don't know when you're going to be finished on a regular episodic or streaming type of television show. The hours, can be, it's like a film.
Yeah.
It's
so
going to be different
like,
every day.
That's like Euphoria and like your current show,
like
which
Euphoria, I'm working on Sex Lives of College Girls.
And you have location changes, and you have these kind of like dream or party moments, like the Halloween episode where you go from everyday hair to fantasy or, kind of.
Yeah. So, depending on the show, like Euphoria and like Sex Lives of College Girls, the hair is very, Sex Lives of College Girls, they're college students. So the hair is not supposed to be too, because you got to think about who are these. These are girls that are in college and they're studying, and it depends. Like there's some sorority girls who have a look that they've created. That's a look that they always wear as a sorority. Or you have girl that's a little more quirky, so her hair is like just like she's studying. Her hair is not really her focal point here. It's just like the hair is pretty basic, I would say. Every day, you don't want them to look like they're business women or lawyers or anything like that. They should look like college students. And but then there's opportunities where, okay, there's a Halloween episode, so costumes, and so then we get to play with some hair and some wigs and do all these really cool things.
From the TV shows she mentioned, which were your favorites?
So earlier I asked you about what it was like when you could look at TV and you saw people that looked like you, and we've seen that increase over the years. Do you have, or have you had an experience where some actress or actor or model sees you come through the door as their hairstylist and they breathe a sigh of relief? What's that
I
like?
was gonna say the sigh of relief on their face is like golden. They're like, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're here." Sometimes they'll say that because I think it's important not only to see someone that's gonna do your hair that's gonna make you comfortable, because you're going in front of the camera. People are concerned about how they're gonna look in front of a camera. Even looking, taking a picture, people are concerned about how they look taking a photo. And so to have it, like even as a department head, I like, even though I can do a lot of things, I like to hire my team depending on who is going to be the cast. I like people that specialize even if I can do it, I'm gonna bring somebody who's better or specialized in that on my team to do that particular thing, because I think that it's important to have that experience and understand what you're doing. And I think it just makes everything flow better and everybody comfortable. Just like, I have customers or clients of mine who are actresses who are going on a movie and they're like, listen, I don't know who's going to be there, so I need you to make me a wig. I need you to put me some extensions in and have my hair ready to go, so when I walk in, I don't have to stress about what's going to happen to my hair. And because it's also about hair care too. If a person doesn't know how to use the right amount of heat on a certain person's hair, they're going to damage it. If they're going to mess up their hair, if they don't really understand what it is. I think more and more people are trying to learn how to work with more textured hair, but even in the African American community, natural hair is becoming a big thing. And even we have to learn how to work with natural hair because, for a time, everybody's used to straightening and relaxing and pressing and, straightening out the hair to make it straight. That we didn't know how to work with, create, our own texture and how to make that work and make that look good. So I think that as more natural hair is coming into play, you need people that know how to do natural hair, braids, barbers. So a lot of people our union has expanded in barbers. That now barbers are hired because cutting hair is different. I know how to cut hair, but I want the guy who cuts hair every day to come in and cut my guys. And there's a certain comfortability that men have with men barbers. There are some women too that are great barbers, but when they're known for a barber, that just brings a certain amount of comfort to the client. I can line up a man's hair. I worked in a barbershop. I can cut hair. But what I do every day is I style hair more than I do cut hair. So I like to bring in a person that actually cuts men's hair every day, all day. This is what they do. So I'll bring that person in and put them on my team to create these looks. And I feel like it makes the men feel comfortable. They don't have to get, this person's a barber. Okay. Every now and then a person's going to want a specific person to do them that they know. And they may not be open for a new barber, but most of the time, guys, as long as they know it's a barber. Oh, okay. I know I'm going to get that special, thing that barbers do. And the same thing with like natural hair or braider. So there's a lot of braids on this show. I'm bringing a braider on because this is what they do every day, all day. Even though I know how to braid, or this person may know how to braid, but I want my team, I like a team of specialists working with me on certain things.
That's right. Have you ever had an experience where you worked on a television show and the talent looked at you and thought you wouldn't know how to do their hair?
Oh, yeah.
Or a producer thought, oh, she's not going to know how to do their hair because they see you as a black woman and they think, oh, she doesn't know what she's doing. So have you ever had that experience?
Well, this is the one thing. I was pretty, by the time I got to television film, I was pretty, I just, when I first got my license, I took a lot of classes and a lot of courses to learn about cutting hair, coloring, and all those different things. Even though I don't use them all, but I wanted to know and understand what they were. Again, I found what my niche was and my specialty was, and I like where I love to live. That's what I call it. I live in that area. But there's plenty of times people come. Now, interesting enough, I went to beauty college that specialized in black hair, and I went to beauty college that specialized in Caucasian hair types. But in all honesty, hair is about texture. And in every race, there are multiple textures. You've got curly, you've got kinky, you've got frizzy, you've got coarse, you've got thick, you've got thin, you've got fine, right? You got to understand how to work with all those hair types. So luckily for me, I work with kind of like both hair types. I've worked with more African American hair school clients. Then I worked with a salon where it was more, a school where it was more Caucasian hair. So I worked with that hair as well. So, and I thought it was important as a hairstylist to do that. Didn't really understand, I'm going to need this later on in life. I just wanted to know, it's what I do. I'm interested in it all. I want to know how it all works.
Do you find that you ever have to prove to people that you know what you're doing?
Especially when I first started in the business, I had to do a lot of proving. A lot of people, listen, when I first walked on some sets, I did get a little bit of like, for example, I come with Beyonce on a show. Oh, are you related to her?
No, stop.
As if she only hires people that are in her family. No, she didn't. I said, no, I've actually departed my head in my own films. I had to turn my resume in to get this job. It was not I'm her cousin and she hired me to come and work with her. No, she hired a professional hairstylist that has experience that's working with her on the job.
So you're the nepotism
do you
hire.
know, right, basically. Or do you not fill out a time card? A lot of people did assume when I first got into business, I don't know, because I was young, right? But very well established already and had done a lot by the time I did get in. And so, I had all kind of questions, and people would look in fear when I walked, like I don't have experience, especially in fashion. Fashion can have a little snobbiness in it. And it wasn't until people thought I was Pat McGrath, maybe from the back, they're like, oh, that's Pat. They would be nicer. Then there was, oh, that's not Pat. She looked like Pat. But then, I've experienced all kinds of things, and I've experienced people that are, assume that you can't do it. And so, I'd like to sit back and prove. Just watch what I do. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to try to boast to tell you. I'm just going to show you what I can do, and do it. And so, there's been a lot of interesting, But now, of course, over the years, when people know who I am, it's interesting enough. Recently I was on a movie, and I wasn't the department head. I came in just to help. And I did all kinds of things. I worked background. I did this. I said, you know what? I'm going to do it because I hadn't done that really. I hadn't really worked background on a film before. And this was a big epic film. And I knew my friend would need help with somebody, and I'm, with experience to come in and help her. And I thought it'd be good for me. I'm going to get my hours and, do something. And I'm glad I did it because now I know too, like what it feels like for stylists that working in background. And I saw things. I said, I could change this. I'm gonna change this when I do background. I want to make sure they have this and that. But it was interesting enough. I had was doing this girl's hair, and she was just being real particular. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't know. I don't. And I brought my own wigs because I don't know. She was just being real interesting. And I was like, dang, okay. And then she was sitting there for a while, and I was doing her hair, and she goes, what's your name? I saw Kim Kimble? Oh my God. She was like, she completely changed. Didn't realize I had done her hair before. She come to my salon, got her hair done, and she's like, oh, do whatever you think. I don't have anything else to say. I won't say anything else. Because she was being picky, like, I don't want this, I don't want that. Because she's probably had some trauma before. She didn't realize who I was. Because now I've established a name in the business.
Right.
So it's different now. Then she was like, oh, no. That's you want that? Oh, I don't have anything to say. Just do whatever you It's funny to me, right? It was funny because, but she didn't realize she had come and she'd been in our salon and we had done her hair. You know what I mean? Because I also had a salon, and I had a lot of these clients came through our salon as well as working in, like, times, even if they're going on a project, a lot of film production companies would send them to my salon before they had braiders on set or people to do extensions that worked on those shows. They send them to us for maintenance, for getting their hair done, and all of that. And so it just so happened she had been through our salon, and she realized, oh my God, wait a minute, I think I know this person.
Nice.
And then she changed her whole attitude.
Nice.
So I was saying that to say, after I've been established, it's much different now. I get treated differently than when I first started. You know, I had to prove myself a lot. The people assumed I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know if it's because I was young or was it because I was a black woman. I don't know, woman. I don't know what it was. But it took a minute for people to be like, oh, okay. You know, after you got established and you got a couple, big clients that people know.
Speaking of your big clients, you want to, so you've had an opportunity to, you hook up with a client or you hook up with a celebrity or a star, wherever they work, if it's a recording artist or an actress or hyphenate or whatever they are, and your careers can ascend at the same time, right? So you connect with Beyonce in the early days of Destiny's Child, and then both of your careers kind of, take off similarly, and you get to impact her look, and she gets to, her celebrity gets to boost your clout, right? You do something similar with Mary J. Blige. You get to do that a little bit with, so when you work with Garcelle Beauvais, wherever she goes, she wants to bring you along with that, and then you were able to do that with Gabrielle Union. You start with some of her films, but then you get to work with her on her TV shows like Being Mary Jane or LA's Finest. Euphoria. So you have this relationship with Zendaya, which goes back to her Disney years.
Interesting enough, like Gabrielle, I started working with her. She was actually on a TV show. She was a client more so. She was coming into the salon, getting her hair done, and then she heard I worked on film, on television. So she started bringing me, actually too, on like red carpet stuff, and then I started getting doing more film with her, and then television like LA Finest. Zendaya, I met her the first time I worked with her. She was very young, 14, 15. She was also a music artist. And so I did her hair for her album packaging. Her hairstylist couldn't come, called me. I came and did her for that. And then next thing you know, I've done a couple red carpet things with her. She was also on a Disney show. I didn't work on any of her TV shows at the time. I just really worked with her red carpet, music video, photo shoots, those sort of things. Then when I have an agent, my agent had put me up, and I started watching Euphoria because she was in it, and she's a client I work with. I said, I want to see this. And I became a fan of the show. And then the second season, when they were looking for another hairstylist, my agent put my resume in, and because she knew me, I know Kim, let's get Kim.
So Zendaya was like, let's get Kim Kimble to do.
Yeah, I
Euphoria.
guess because her director was like, they said she'd work with you before you know her, and she recommended, she'd be great, because she was an executive producer on the show and everything, so she definitely weighed in on me getting that opportunity to work with her. So that was my first time actually getting to work with her on a TV show, which was great. But the interesting enough about Euphoria, she plays kind of like a kid that was, a teenager that's on drugs, and her hair's never quite right. It's like, so it's complete like opposite of what I do with her all the time at work. I style her hair, for things. This is where she kind of would come in and it'd be like perfect for what the director was like, I don't want her to look glamorous because she's already beautiful and glamorous. If you do too much to her hair, it's going to take you out of what the character is. So this is where restraint had to come in, like, okay. She would walk in sometimes and she's like, I think this is perfect for what I'm doing. And we'd be like, yeah, there's nothing really to do.
So you even have to ensure that as part of the character, that her tousled look has to be tousled to fit the character.
Exactly. It was like sort of like she wake up in the morning and this is how it looked. It was perfect for what it needed to be for. And that was, so that was an interesting thing.
You also got to work with other characters, Jules,
Yeah.
Gia, Cassie, Maddie, and Lexi.
Yeah, which were all super talented, So that it was great to actually work because I worked with Zendaya before, but it was great to actually work with the new I call them the young Gen Zers.
Nice, nice.
Yes, I got to work with them, and the good thing I watched the series before, so I kind of understood like what their characters were like already. So it really, and then I met with the director, had a vision boards, of course, for each character.
Can you talk a little bit about in season 2, episode 4, you who cannot see, think of those who can, and I think the finale, the theater and its double, like you were being creative. Well, you're always being creative, but like
this was in a different way. It was cool because there was a lot of doubles because the way he shot it, there was like a mirror, like there's a double and then there's the real person, so having to match the hair, and then the whole play was just a creative thing within itself. I think the character too was by this time Cassie is the character name. In the script he wrote her now, because she was morphing into something else because she was dating her best friend's ex-boyfriend, and she became kind of obsessed with how, trying to like, I guess she wasn't getting from him what she wanted because I guess he still was in love with the other girl or confused about what he wanted. So, she started obsessing over herself, and then I can't remember exactly what the script was, but she was morphed into sort of this Barbie-like. That's how he described it in the script character. So we had to put this beautiful long blonde wig on her.
So Cassie is messing around with Maddie's ex, right? And
Yes.
so the boyfriend's not giving Cassie what she.
I think the thing was like he kind of was confused about what he even wanted.
Right.
And so, but it just showed her range of, and that's the perfect example how the director described her manic behavior and her anxiety, I think, from dating her best friend's man, and him taking her through a little psychological abuse. I think she started like working on her hair and her makeup. That's what he used to show her. She was like doing all this stuff to try to fix things, and that was, for us, that was fun because she had 5 different hairstyles. Like she changed her hair one way, and next day in school she comes back with a different hairstyle, and then like 5 days it's like a montage of her changing her look.
And the director just says, "I need you to advance this hair. I just need you to change the hair."
Yeah, he wrote it in the script that way, and then with the meetings, he described like we did production meetings, and a lot of time that's a chance for them to, we ask questions, and he tells us, what his vision is for that, and so it was. But I liked how he used hair and beauty as a way to help describe. It sells you on what's happening.
And similarly, you had an opportunity to kind of reproduce iconic hairstyles for you who cannot see, think of those who can.
Yeah, that's the one that the episode that we got nominated for.
So Rue and Jules keep changing.
That's the thing, because when I was going to do before, I think, the hair is not really good. I mean, it's kind of cool, but I didn't think it was going to be as creative as I thought. But when he came up with this whole montage of the love between Jules and Rue, he recreated all these love scenes out of different eras or movies. So you have Ghost, where we had to do the Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. So we had to create these.
You did
big,
Titanic, Brokeback Mountain. You did John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
And then there was Frida Kahlo and Diego.
Right.
I don't think then there was this one, like a painting that he had where they both had their faces covered. I guess.
The lovers.
The lovers, yeah. So it was all these different, although that didn't really require any hair. But that was fun was to do all that and put the different wigs and kind of make them recreate those looks. Oh, and then there was Venus, and we did this long. You don't really, I think you didn't really get to see it well because technically it was in water, and hair was supposed to be floating, but I think I didn't understand the gravity because it was the first time I'd done underwater things, but it was underwater all the way, so the hair moves underwater. If you're laying it back in a pool, this was a great time. We should have tested this, but laying back in a pool, gravity, the hair just fell down. So you didn't see how long the hair was really long for that scene.
You were able to get Emmy nominations for those episodes of Euphoria. Are you slated to go back for season 3 of Euphoria?
Yes, I'm waiting for season 3. So far, yep, I have
Nice.
waiting for that.
And you're enjoying Sex Lives of College Girls?
Yes, it's another show. It kind of reminds me of a little bit of Euphoria. It's a little different, but it has that same younger, young college girls.
Excellent. Now, that's all heavily scripted, serialized, cable content. What about the fast-paced life of reality or unscripted television? I mean, you were X Factor, you were Dancing with the Stars, The Voice. Tell us a little bit about your experience in doing that. Tell us about your experience in doing that.
Well, for me, most of those I've maybe department headed a few, but most of those I was personal or coming with a guest. So I didn't have the responsibility of running the whole show. I did have one show that I've recently done that's not even out yet, as the department head, but it is different. It's kind of like live TV, but they do pre-tape some stuff. It may tape for a whole week, but it depends because if I'm there with a personal, I'm only there when they're there.
So you were personal for Tyra Banks on Dancing with the Stars?
Personal for Tyra Banks for Dancing with the Stars. Shakira on The Voice. I was her personal. I've also come with other artists performing on these shows, or coming as a guest on the show. Or I've worked with host, like on X Factor. I worked with a couple of the hosts on there. And then
did you do Paula Abdul for?
I worked with Paula Abdul on, I believe it was X Factor. It was either X Factor or was
Did you tell
American
her that
Idol.
I was a dancer for her? Just kidding.
I wonder if I did. I don't know. She was so nice though.
Yes, she was. She was
really
always
nice.
very sweet. But you also, we talked a little bit about this, but you also did Shakira for that one that she did with Jennifer Lopez at the Super Bowl, right?
I did her for the Super Bowl. I've worked with her on videos and music videos and things like that. But her TV, I worked with her on TV when she did The Voice, and she had a television show called Dancing with Myself, which is another it was a dance reality show. Those shows are really cool. The hours also, you kind of know what the hours are too.
Nice.
They're pretty they stick to a certain amount of hours. But it's different because it's
The energy's different.
The energy is different. It's much more faster. It's much more stage, for those particular kind of shows, because those are about performances, dancing, singing. Those are all about performance. So it has a little bit different vibe than a regular television show or even a regular reality show.
Like a reality show like LA Hair?
Definitely different from LA Hair.
How did you wind up with a show called LA Hair? How did you move from behind the chair to in front of the camera yourself?
Yeah, it was interesting enough. I had kind of wanted to I actually wanted to create something. I wanted to produce a show for beauty in the beauty space. I did at one point. And interesting enough, I tried to do a little bit. I had given up on it first. I had given up on it because I had got so many no's. It didn't really work. So I gave up on it. And then but interesting enough, it wasn't really about me, the shows. It wasn't about me. And then I got a weird email from my PR company that I'm no longer even working with anymore. They were like, "Oh, somebody reached out to you about this. Do you want to look into this?" And they just passed it on. And I almost just blew it off. I'm like, So I reached back out to them. I said, "Hey, yeah," because I really wasn't interested in much doing TV again, because I felt like maybe this wasn't a time for me to do it or wasn't something that was going to work out for me. So a production company reached out to my PR team about, possibly talking about doing some kind of reality show. And I was like, I never heard of them. I don't know. But I took a meeting with them, and they were like, how would you feel about doing a show about your salon? And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. I had never even worked on that type of reality show. I'd only been on like stuff like American Idol. I didn't, I watched a lot of reality TV.
Those competition shows.
Yeah, those competition kind of shows. I never even worked on a reality show that was like a docuseries, right? And so I was like, maybe, I don't know. So we shot like a little pilot, and for some reason they felt like, someone was looking for this opportunity. So they were kind of like, let's do this. And I'm going to take you to this production company that we're working with, to see if they're interested in working with you. So, okay. I didn't think anything was going to happen with it. I was like, whatever. I did it. And then the production company says, okay, we want to meet her in person. So I went and met with the guy, and I talked to him, interviewed with him, and he was like, okay. So they were like, yeah, we want to take her on. We're going to shop a TV show about her salon after we shot like a pilot. And then they reshot another quick little pilot. It was more like a sizzle reel, not a pilot, a sizzle reel. And then I just kept on working. I wasn't really thinking about it. And then so they shot the sizzle reel, the production company, which was called 3Ball.
3Ball.
At the time. And it's okay. I'm working in Atlanta. I went down to Atlanta, was working on a TV show called Let's Stay Together. BET had a bunch of TV shows. That's when I did Mary Jane, being Mary Jane, and all that kind of stuff on there. And I go, okay. And then I get a call. Usually I'd gone, into meetings and met with people, but I didn't. I don't know what they were doing. They were shopping it around, and next thing I know, I get a call and go, WeTV wants to pick up the show. And I'm like, I hadn't even been on any meetings to meet with anybody, any productions, or any network meetings. Pitch meetings, that's what it was. I'd never been on a pitch meeting with them. And they pitched it, and they got picked up, just like that. It hadn't been long, and then next thing I know, and so, they went through the whole rigmarole of getting it done or whatever. And then, first day of shooting, and I'm sitting there going, like, it took a year for us to actually shoot it after it got picked up. And I'm sitting there going, what in the world?
Well, how did you like being in front of the camera?
Because I didn't think I was on front of the camera person. I didn't really think that was my thing. So what I'm saying is it felt crazy the first day they brought the cameras in, because I hadn't even worked on a reality show like this. I'm thinking they're going to be in the bush hiding with cameras. I didn't know what to expect. But they came in the salon. It was a whole nother thing. And I didn't become an executive producer till season 3, right? That in the contract, the first 2 years, I'm just and then executive producer in season 3.
Did they involve you in the development?
I was involved. That's the one thing about it, and that's what I liked about it, because I was involved with the development of everything, because it was basically a docuseries of what I do. And it was strange because I'm a behind the camera person. So now I'm in front of the camera, and I'm like, really felt like I'm breaking the third wall, really, or what they call it, the fourth wall. Yeah, I'm breaking the fourth wall. To me, it was the most epic, but cool. I don't even know how this happened, but I got booked from my agent to work with Miss Piggy.
And Miss Piggy was going to appear where?
Miss Piggy, I was actually styling Miss Piggy's hair for the Oscars. Okay?
This was the 84th Annual Academy Awards.
Yes, 84th Annual Academy Awards. And I thought, we asked them, would they, let us capture us getting her ready for the Oscars for LA Hair? And they said yes. And when I tell you, I grew up watching the Muppets. It was like unreal for me, because I'm like, this is Miss Piggy, and this is different. I'm doing a Muppet. You know what I mean? Like, this is not like anything I've ever done. Like, talk about stepping out of the box.
Yeah.
This was stepping out of the box.
And she was such a diva.
And she was such a diva. She was in her true form, Miss Piggy. I thought I was going to get a karate chop or something. I was like, oh, no. Let me not piss her off, because I can see how Miss Piggy can get.
Yes.
Right? But it was just so much fun. It was such, and that's the one thing about, I like the reality show, but it was, now, at first I was a little nervous about doing something like that, but then it became, I liked stepping out of the box and doing something different. It was different for me. It challenged me to be in front of the camera, which now I'm comfortable. I would be more comfortable. Definitely would love to do something like that again, in whatever, different way. It could be same way, something different. But now I don't have an issue with television. I can, because at first I was nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to think, and I was, it was out of my comfort zone. For sure, because like I said, I was a behind the scenes person.
And now you're having to manage this team in front of the camera too. What was it? How did you share the show information with the cast? People who had worked in your salon or you'd worked with on different projects over the years. Tell me how you brought them into the mix, and how did you bring our mother into the conversation?
Well, I mean, listen, it's reality. It's what it's what's going on. The people that are really around me: my mother, my sister, my son, my and it took a minute to we didn't introduce everybody all at the same time, but it was I think reality, the best thing about it is kind of what's authenticity, and is what's natural, is what's really interesting for this time. It became a thing. People wanted to see more real things.
And the other stylists they were like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, it's interesting how they it's when people get on camera, they turn into different people. You know what I mean? Things change. And I feel like drama's definitely heightened a little bit, But that's the whole thing. And that's the one thing they would tell me. They would say, listen, what's happening? There was no script or nothing. It's like, cameras come on, go. It's like, okay, I mean, it's definitely planned, and everything. You have to have some kind of organization and a plan. But it's like they put on the camera and see what happens. Mm-hmm. It's interesting and everything different from what I've learned. Mm-hmm. But one thing I got to do was I got, again, that creativity. I got to, I helped create some scenarios and things for us to do.
By being booked on different jobs, that's what helped elevate you to executive producer status also, correct?
Exactly. So, but booked on a different job, but also too, things for us to do as a team on the show. So I want to do fashion show. I want to do this. I want to do that. So
and these are all things that you were always inclined to do anyway.
Exactly. So it was comfortable for me in a way because it was what I do anyway.
Even the first day of filming, even the first day of shooting?
No, I said it was comfortable as it got going because it was just basic. I didn't know what to expect the first day. I'm like, are they going to be hiding behind bushes around my house? What are they going to be doing? I literally didn't know because I never worked on that type of a show, Mm-hmm. I'd only done maybe, like you said, X Factor or something like that. That's different. That's a different kind of reality. This is a different genre. And, I got to still do hair. That's why I said I was comfortable because I do what I do, mm-hmm. right? This is what I do. And I have a business. It was real. So it's authentic. And I thought that was great. It's not something I made up or anything like that.
Right.
It's not like an actor they had to create a character and then they got to do all that. No, it was just me being me.
It was, you got to Kimbleize a TV show.
You got to Kimbleize a show.
Where did that come from?
Came from LA Hair. It became Hair Majesty.
Yes.
That was so funny that they would coin me as Hair Majesty, when they would do the promos. And then it became, it kind of...
You embraced it.
Embraced it, and it caught on. And then Kimbleize, one day I said it in an interview that I Kimbleized her. And that became a thing.
Nice.
Yeah, and then because they did those really cool chimes, ching, and I did the Kimbleize ching, and it made it like a cool fun thing.
Did you enjoy bringing Jonathan Anton onto the show?
I actually did. I was a fan of Blowout. I loved watching him throw the jar of product across the room. It was funny to me, so I thought it was cool. It was for me, he was the first, to me, reality hair person to do a docuseries. So it was an honor for me to have someone like him.
I mean, who knew hair could be entertaining in that way?
Right, exactly. Because he entertained me on, I love Blowout, and I never thought, I'd have a show similar, So him doing that, and then it's kind of surreal getting him to come be on the show and we worked together. It was cool.
Did you have any concern about kind of like how women of color are normally portrayed, or regularly or routinely portrayed in reality or unscripted TV? Mm-hmm. Did you have any concern of that showing up on your show, especially with you having women of color celebrities on your show, people of color on the cast on the show? Were you concerned about, kind of like the way in which some networks push Black reality into kind of performing over the top?
Of course, because I'm already a brand. When I became a reality TV personality, I was already a brand, and I had a good reputation and a great brand. And I some things are kind of a little bit out of my control on when it comes to television and network and what, that's the whole thing. I didn't get to see what it looked like before it went on air. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I had to be conscious, but this is it. They get what you give them. So you, and the only thing about reality TV kind of sometimes exposes who people really are. Mm-hmm. And because you don't get to pretend this is who you are, and it will come out eventually. If it's there, it's going to come out. Because they specialize, their producers, in how to draw out things. They specialize in they see and they know how to work that thing they see in you.
Did you know that about producers in television?
I did not know that at all about reality TV. I didn't know it. But this is the thing.
But you've been working in television for years.
I've been working in television for years. Listen, but I'll tell you what, I don't regret it. I think that there was drama, but it was also funny to me. It was comical drama.
Well, we really saw that in
It wasn't train wreck drama.
No.
It wasn't. That's what I didn't want that. Because also, too, like I said, I have a brand and a business. I have my business, and I wanted to protect my business at all costs.
Right, exactly.
And my reputation at all costs. So, there was a lot of calls like, I'm not doing that. That's not happening.
I was right there with you.
If they got something, can we not use that, please? And I had to put my trust in their hands. And luckily, but some things, honestly though, it wouldn't be entertaining if it wasn't some form of drama, or some, because this is life. It's conflict and there's things,
Did you, was it your idea to do our little LA hair reunion during COVID?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was my idea. I thought, it might be fun to do it because there's still people on my social media that ask me about LA hair. When is it coming back? I missed the show. I love the show. So during the pandemic, I was like, let's do just a quick reunion and I put it on YouTube, just for the fans, really.
That was fun.
And it was fun. And the thing about it was fun, and I liked because I did get to help produce some things on the show, and I had a lot of ideas, which sparked more ideas every episode. Let's do this, let's do that, let's try this, let's try that. This would be fun to try. And it's part of kind of what I like to do, and then I had to make sure my hair looked good, as well as doing other people's hair. It's a lot of hair going on.
So there's hair going on behind the camera, and there's hair going on in front of the camera.
Yeah,
amazing.
This time, but it's me and I'm doing hair, so it was a lot. But I will say I would definitely do it again.
Nice,
because I liked the fact that I liked what it was. It was funny, it was dramatic, and it was hair. You know what I mean?
It was funny, it was dramatic, and it was what I do. Which is what hair is.
Yeah, it's what I do. Now, if you want me to come on here and do a monologue about, you might have a problem about it's something that I don't know anything about.
Right.
But when it comes to what I do for a living and what I love, it works.
How did COVID impact your television work? Your life?
It in a very strange way. Well, everything was shut down. Right. We had to shut down salon. There was no jobs happening during COVID. Eventually, though, as things got a little bit opened up a little bit, I went out of the salon completely. And so I took a break because all throughout my career, I've had a salon and I've worked on set. So I always had both. And for the first time, I didn't have the salon because we closed down during the pandemic because we couldn't work.
You couldn't work.
Nobody could work. And I didn't know what was happening, what was going on. And, didn't know what was going to happen, And so, like I'll say, I was sitting at home a lot, binge watching, got into organizing stuff and planning, planning me a little spot to work at home. And
Did you boost your YouTube's production during that period?
yeah, I started doing like YouTube
and
things,
Instagram lives
and YouTube and teaching classes. We did a lot of classes, digital, online classes and things like that. So I got into doing some other things like that because I didn't know where we were going. I knew things would be different. And after that, I didn't know in what way, but it would be. And then when television started coming back, the first show I did when off the pandemic was the
morning show.
The morning show.
How was it working with Steve Carell?
The best. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his. I think I've watched the 40-year-old version 100 times. I've had to, and it was cool. He was very, quiet, and, didn't say much. Wasn't picky.
Wasn't demanding.
Wasn't demanding. None of that.
He was just like, I'm fine.
Yeah, he was. I don't even know if he looked in the mirror. It was like, I'm fine, and that was that. It's so easy, and it was such an honor, pleasure to work with him.
Did you do Reese Witherspoon and
Reese
Jennifer Aniston also?
No, they had their own personals. They had personals, but I worked with everybody else.
You did the department manager.
Yeah, I was department head, and it was different because coming back into. No, actually, that was not my first show. Coming back, it was Dancing with the Stars. Oh. It wasn't a morning show. And so we had to get tested every day. That was a whole nother thing. Testing. Shields. Working with, I think the first day was so dramatic. The first day, we didn't know, but we were very dramatic with the whole COVID thing. Like I had on the whole plastic suit.
Why did you have
trying to do hair with a mask? I can't hardly see good with the shield and the mask.
This is on Dancing with the Stars or
this
the morning
Dancing
show?
with the Stars. I think the first thing was like actually a photo shoot, and we had all that on. Now when we did the show, you shoot for Dancing with the Stars. Now when we did the show, it was still mask, shield, testing before you come in. I had to come in a day or two before the actual thing to test because you have to wait 2 or 3 days, and then you get tested when you come there, and you have to wait before you go on set to set up that your test is clear. I mean, it was a whole nother thing.
And you had to constantly, as a department head, constantly make sure that all of your team was obeying all of those rules also.
Right. Now, the team had to test. They had to wear masks. Everything had to be sanitized. I had went and bought disposable capes. I had to sanitize things that specialized for sanitizing COVID. We had to wear gloves sometimes. It was like a whole nother thing, and really tough though, because it was not what you're used to, and it was very, a little bit inconvenient, but it was, very necessary, because if one person got COVID and we're all in the same trailer, all of us are shut down for the week. All of us are going home, getting tested and going home. It was a weird time, but it was tough. And, I think the hours was not as long. They cut the hours down. They cut certain things down. Food changed. Everything was packaged. No regular caterer. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just like weird in a way. Craft service, they used to bring stuff, that stopped. A lot of things changed during the pandemic. They're kind of getting a little bit back to normal now, because it's been a while.
Yeah.
Since we had that pandemic, but for a while it was very interesting. Even when I went to Euphoria, we had to get tested 2 or 3 days a week, and you have to know who you're gonna have working on your team a couple days early because everybody's got to get tested.
Right.
Yeah, it was different.
But everybody
But
adapted.
I felt safe.
Good.
Safer than the salon, because I felt like I didn't understand what it would mean to have to run a business like that because we're extremely close with customers. We're shampooing, we're on top of them like that. You know what I mean?
Breathing over people.
Breathing over people. You have to make sure people are tested 2 or 3 days before. You know, like I learned what would have to happen by doing it on TV shows. Although it still was a little different because we're even more closer to the customer.
Yeah.
You know, and we're standing for hours trying to do hair and mask and all that. It's just really tough.
Oh my goodness.
You know,
What type of business do you have?
and so I just didn't think it was going to work in a salon. The same.
What was it like meeting Oprah for the first time?
It's funny enough, I met her on Wrinkle in Time. I did her hair in Wrinkle in Time, but I'd met her before that.
You met
I'd
her
been on her
years.
shows several times. I'd been on the Oprah show doing the makeovers, but I didn't really get to talk to her. But yeah, listen,
You went on there with the helicopter though.
I did. I was on there, but I didn't really get to talk to her and like get to be like on this. I got to work with her more on Wrinkle in Time, kind of more face to face, because she had her hairstylist that had been with her for years. But I guess she didn't do films. I and this was specific hair thing going on with the hair for the film. But it was fantastic because she's Oprah at the end of the day, and she's somebody I had admired for years. You know what I mean, because of what she has been able to accomplish and what she's done for the industry and for women of color. She just, when you say boss, that's a boss. Okay, like
Capital B boss.
She's a real boss.
Right.
And as being a woman who is also an entrepreneur and who's also a boss, it's good to, she's just a great person to admire and look at.
Was having someone like Oprah and then our grandmother, gave you the confidence to start your own product line, or you just always knew that was something you were going to do?
You know what made me want to start my product line? It was couple things happened when I was doing hair. I went to Dudley Cosmet University, and it was it's a school for hairstylists. After you've graduated, they had cosmetizing school, but when you graduated, if you wanted to learn more things, they had a university and you could get like an AA or a BA or whatever. And you would go there, and Mr. Dudley, he has his own hair product, and he had a graduation ceremony at the end of the week after you come. He had a hotel. You come. It was like in Greensboro, North Carolina. I thought I'd never seen anything like this. And I thought that this was an amazing thing. So they had their own hotel. You come and you stay there. They had their school. They had a cafeteria there. They had a plant where they manufactured all the products. And when I saw that, and then I saw his team, because they would come to our school and our city, and they would run classes and events. And I saw they sold products, and they taught you how to retail in the salon. That kind of, and I would buy their products and I would retail them in the salon, and that kind of inspired me. But what it was is like watching my clients needing certain things. Mm-hmm. So I started trying to make products to fulfill the needs of what I felt at the time. It wasn't a lot of products that I felt that I liked, and then also trying to fix their needs. Mm-hmm. And then when I started doing classes and doing stuff, I remember this woman, she said, you need to have something to sell when you teach. So all of those things that was happening at the same time, so it just made me start working and developing products.
Nice.
Which is something I had to learn all over again. It's producing something, create another creative outlet for me. So
good.
Which is something that I enjoy doing.
You have had a career that has spanned over 20 years now. 30. Good Lord, you're getting old.
Yeah.
What's the one? I mean, in the business has changed so many times.
I think I worked on B.A.P.S. I believe it was in 1994. Or was it 1996?
No, I think B.A.P.S is 97. I think
it may have come out in 97.
97.
But we filmed, we shot it in, usually a year before, so it must be 1996.
Yeah.
So we're almost at 30 years.
Yeah, but I'm going back to Rodney Brimmer. I'm going back to.
We're definitely in 30 years.
Okay. I'm going back to the
we're almost
beginning.
at 30 years out from B.A.P.S. So
yeah.
And I started 19.
Yeah. So
I got my license at 19, but I started doing hair really at 16.
Yeah, I know you did.
So we're talking about, are we talking about 40 years? No, 30 something years.
No. We're talking
30
about,
something years.
you got you doing the 5 Heartbeats on West Angeles, on
Yeah,
Crenshaw.
yeah.
You've been around for a minute. And so the industry's changed so many times over the last 3 decades. Is there a standout thing for you of how the business has changed? And now it's streaming and digital stuff and Instagram stylists being brought in to work on. I mean, like, what is there a standout thing about how the industry has changed to your mind?
Wow, it's changed in so many ways.
There are more channels now than there were back then.
Yeah, I mean,
Television is
but the hair is
diversified.
still the hair.
The hair is still the hair.
The hair is still the hair. Really, it's still the difference is, of course, now you've got younger people coming in. It's not as strict as it was. The doors kind of opened up a lot more. A lot of more people have gotten in.
Nice.
They did specialty waivers in the union. So now you have people that do braids, that do this, and barbers. You've got more people of color in the business. But, it's still kind of similar in terms of the work. Yeah, if you've got a lot of streaming channels, but, you still need to shoot continuity. Now, maybe how they do continuity, now you have all these technical, like, we would take Polaroids, pictures with camera.
On your
and
phone.
then we print them out, right?
Okay.
But it used to be Polaroids. Polaroids don't exist anymore. So now you got camera phones and you can print it out on a printer and do continuity photos. Or they have this whole thing called synchronizing. I think I'm not saying it right. I'm not saying it right. But there's a digital platforms that you take pictures and upload them into a software, and they do this continuity thing for you. So technology's changed a little bit. We use our phones to do continuity pictures now. We don't need to buy cameras anymore. We only just use that because you still got to do continuity. That's still the same. You still do characters. Wigs have become very big. They started in film though. Wigs were already big in film before in her early 30s,
way back in the beginning.
40s. They had wigs and stuff back in the day. So I mean, the products have become more advanced. The tools have become more advanced. Some of the techniques have become more advanced. But it's still the same
hair is still
thing.
the hair.
You do the hair for the movie or the show or whatever it is. And, it's kind of the same rules, really, apply. The only difference is when I got in, you had to be a journeyman to be a department head. So once I got in the union, I hurried up and did my journey, learned my thing and did you have to do a journeyman test.
What's a journeyman?
So a journeyman is the second level of hairstylist, top tier. That's really more like the top tier of hairstylists. You're allowed to key in department head when you're a journeyman. You have to go through this whole course and learn these specific things. It's learning the craft of doing hair, certain things like how to wrap a head with the people don't even use that anymore, but it was like a wig wrap. They call it, or band wrap. They wrap the hair. How to put stunt wigs, how to set up your kit properly, how to apply a wig on properly, how to create a turn of the century, like the Marie Antoinette type of hair.
That was some next level stuff.
Yeah, or period hair. You had to do a period hairstyle. It's like a whole test that you have to do, and then you're named journeyman. That means you're allowed to department head. Now they don't do that anymore. They don't test people for that anymore. Yeah, it became a class. First you had to take the class, you have to learn it, then you have to pass a test. Then it became just a class. And now I don't even think they even do it anymore. I think it doesn't even exist, which I think is good though, because I think that the quality and the craft of the business should stay at the level that it is. You need to know period hair if you're going to be working in film. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You
or
need
TV
to
shows,
know how to wrap, to properly put on a stunt double's wig, so you don't they don't get injured when they're doing the stunt by any pins or anything that you put in their hair. Mm-hmm. It's just certain things about the business that people should learn and, be perfected.
What advice would you give aspiring stylists who want to be professionals in television and film?
The advice that I would give is that definitely find a mentor, someone who can mentor you and really teach you the craft and that'll help guide you so that you are set up for success in this, because it's different. Anybody coming out of a salon, if you didn't grow up in film and television, you need to know it's different. It's a different way of styling hair. It's a different thing. And understanding how it operates and how it works, from the business to the styling, you need to know all of that. It's not just coming in there, and you need to be versatile. That's the one thing I was glad that I learned a lot. I was versatile. I was open to learning I learned as much as I could, coloring, cutting, how to, to do style, specific styles, extensions, wigs, all of that. Barbering, utilize all of this in a television. The one thing, you can specialize something in a salon, and that's all you do. On film and television, you don't have to do it all, but you should know. And you never know who's going to sit in your chair.
That's right.
Who
right.
are they going to put in your chair? What are you going to do? You're going to limit yourself in what you can do if you don't. So if I put any advice out there, learn as much as you can, get a great mentor if you can.
Be versatile.
Be versatile.
How would you like to be remembered?
I'd like to be remembered as let me just say it this way. Well, first of all, someone who it definitely is inspiring to other hairstylists, but know that I was, like I said, I was a risk taker. I did many different things. I took a lot of risk in the business. I wasn't afraid to jump out there and try something different and do something different. Even coming into this business was a different thing for me. I was in salons and doing hair shows. I'd never done a film. But then I jumped in head first and just went on in,
Well, if I could just offer, as someone who's watched you for a long time, it never occurred to you that you couldn't do something. And I think that's pretty brilliant on your part. You just always were, let me go tell Robert Townsend I want to do his play. I mean, like it didn't occur to you that you should not venture into those spaces.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty proud of you for that.
Yeah, by nature, I'm an adventurous person.
Yeah, you are.
Whether it's in business,
or are you out there parasailing,
or I'm
jet
parasailing
skis?
and jet skiing, and
what the hell?
Going to I remember the first time I traveled out of the country at 20-something years old and didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, we should tell that story, but we're not going to do it right now.
Yeah.
So the Television Academy Foundation has been conducting these oral history interviews for over 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a great opportunity.
What do you think is the value of preserving these personal experiences and behind-the-scene insights and stories from within the industry? Like you're behind the scenes. Like you said at the beginning, people, when you watched the show and you just thought people just showed up looking like that. So the Television Academy has steadfastly captured all those people who made you think that people just showed up in front of the camera looking like that. What do you think is the value of documenting these histories, documenting your history?
I think it's great because there's always someone who's interested in learning and want to know. And I think and also, too, other people can see, oh, I could do that. This is a profession I could do. Like LA Hair, that's the one thing about LA Hair, exposed a lot of, even you saw me doing TV and film on there, too. You saw all those different things. And a lot of people say, oh, I wanted to do hair, but, when I watched it, it made me want to go do hair. And it made people think, I could do something else other than just stand behind a chair. I think that the fact that people got to see that exposure, it's education, it's learning, and knowledge is power at the end of the day. That is such a cliche word, right? But it's so true. It's one of those things that's just true. Like knowledge gives you the power to do something, when you learn something or how to do it or when to do it or why to do it.
And capturing these histories is
a way capturing history. Like how it's interesting to learn about history, learning about other cultures, learning other things. The doing it is very interesting, I guess, or to some. And like I said, there are people that I don't know, or maybe someone who doesn't know what they want to do, and they look at that, go, "Oh, I want to do that." Or I think history is important. I like there's things I want to know in history that I don't know. Like, for example, I love reading the Bible because I like those historical stories. And through those historical stories, I learn also, things like I learn life lessons when I read them, or, you know, just knowing that there's something out there that's similar to something I've gone through.
Well, and then I think another value, if I could tell you,
Yeah,
could say this
but
is
also
that
too, you can learn what to do and what not to do. That's why I say mentorship is important because you can learn what to do and what not to do, which is equally
just
as
important to
important.
know what not to do.
Exactly.
And then this interview gives you a chance to tell your story.
Yes, it gives me opportunity to tell my story. Which is an honor to be able to tell your story that anybody cares and even want to listen.
Right on.
But I think that it's great, and it's good to hear it again and again and again, and to go back down memory lane. It's good.
Because somebody else will come along and say that. Never mind, I'll stop there.
Yeah. But,
anything else you want to share?
But I would say that I've had an amazing career. I would say that I do know. If I don't know anything else, I know that I've had an amazing career because I've got to do a lot of things. I've got to work with some amazing people, from photographers to directors to actresses to actors to singers to entertainers to even, maybe some political people, talk show people, news people, like lots of different genres.
We didn't even talk about like your the photographers and that you've worked, like Vogue and
but this is about TV.
Yeah,
anyway,
I know,
so
but
it doesn't matter. But
who was the guy with the big horn lasses that died recently? Was it Givenchy?
Oh, it was
Not Versailles.
Karl Lagerfeld.
Karl Lagerfeld.
Which I didn't even know he was a photographer. But
he's a designer.
He's a designer, but he also recently, in his latter years, got into photography, and I did get to do a shoot with him. I did a photo shoot, which he is an icon, right? Chanel, Fendi, all that fantastic stuff that we like to buy. He's, was that person, but I did a photo shoot with him, Nicki Minaj, and while I was doing the shoot, I was doing her hair, touching up, and he goes, "I want you to be in the shot." I'm not going to tell Karl Lagerfeld no. Okay, sure. What do you want me to do? It was just so random. I would have dressed differently. I probably would have had. That's why you always got to stay ready. You never know what's going to happen in this business. Some people have been on films, and I've had my hands in films. Oh, we want a real hair person to do the hair. I've had my hands in stuff that you don't even know. Doing hair. If there's a scene for that. I was on a movie. Kendra was a hair one of my hairstylists, and the director put her in the film doing something. You never know. You just got to stay ready. But that's the beauty about our business. I will say that hair is a business that I love, right? In every genre, whether it's on set, whether it's in a salon, whether it's being a spokesperson for a beauty brand. Whether it's whatever it is, it's so many, great opportunities. You could do so much in it. It's so vast. And that's the beautiful thing that they will learn about this interview, that yes, you could be a hairstylist that does television, but television has taken me to, not only working with some of the biggest and iconic people in the world, but it has, gave me the opportunity of also, becoming my own brand, my own television show, even, which is a whole nother kind of TV. I just did the shopping network because I do, wigs is my specialty. So we did a line of wigs for HSN, which is a whole nother TV.
Another thing.
Shopping network as a whole. They have like a whole production there. It's like a whole campus with cameras and everything, and it's a constantly live thing going on. So it has taken me to so many different places, just doing hair, and of course, being a hairstylist working in television has actually elevated all those things, because what it does, it gives you a certain kind of credibility. Oh, she works with celebrities. She works on TV shows and things like that. It really helps to boost a person's
You don't have to prove
resume.
yourself anymore, do you?
Not like I used to. We still in a way, but not as hard as it was when you don't have it. But it does, like I said, it gives you specific credibility that opens up many other doors, if that's what the door you want to walk into. Some people just do that, and that's all they do is work behind the scenes. They're not doing TV shows. They're not creating brands. They're not going on shopping networks. They're not brand ambassadors. They're not, doing videos. They just do this, and that's great. That's great too.
You were Emmy nominated for Euphoria.
Yes, but a couple times for Cinderella.
You were Emmy
Oh, I didn't
nominated-
talk much about Cinderella. Real quick.
Okay, yes, please.
Okay, so
Talk about
Cinderella was a great film. This is the film I worked with Natalie. This was a movie that she fought to get me. After working with her on B.A.P.S, she brought me on Cinderella, which was an interesting version of Cinderella. It was like a musical.
Multicultural, multi-ethnic.
That was very progressive back then, because now inclusion is a big thing, but
This was a black Cinderella.
it was a black Cinderella, Brandy, and she had braids. And so while I was on that, Brandy I guess lost her hairstylist and picked me up to come in, because I came for Natalie, and she picked me up to work on her as well, and that's how I met Brandy. And it was interesting enough as doing Cinderella with braids, because that was her thing, was braids. And I got to create like pieces and stuff to go along with the braids to change the hair and make the hair look different, and that's the important thing. Like, wigs and pieces help you really change up the looks in a way. That's why I really got into wigs even more and pieces, because it was a fast way to change looks and recreate looks for people. Because Natalie had a bunch of different hairstyles. Like in B.A.P.S, we did a lot of different hair. She did a lot of different hair. And some of the fastest way to do it is with pieces and wigs, right? And so I had to create the same thing for Brandy, like braid pieces and braid things, so that I could, switch up her hair for Cinderella. And, even though I didn't do Whitney Houston in this movie, she was, executive producer and a big part of this movie. And it was just iconic because she was a part of it. Years later, I got to work with Whitney Houston on Sparkle, and her last album that she did, who was an icon within herself. And which a great actress. I loved all her films and things that she's done. But to me, that have to be I work with a lot of amazing people, but having the chance as a young girl growing up looking at Whitney Houston and working with her, that has to be probably was a pretty, aha moment in my life, I guess, or it was a big deal for me to have been called to work with Whitney Houston on her album. I think that's when I kind of felt like, oh, okay, this is, she was, to me, because, I work with Beyonce and she's iconic, but she was already big with Destiny's Child when I met her. When I met Beyonce, she was just going into her single, as a single artist. And I watched her grow and turn into an even bigger icon, right? But Whitney was a big icon. I remember she was a big icon when I worked with her.
Right.
And so that was just different, because I was like, wow, it's Whitney Houston,
What was it like getting nominated for an Emmy for Cinderella? I mean, you were nominated for Outstanding Hairstyling for a miniseries, movie, or special.
Yeah, I had been nominated for a couple of different things, but this was the first time I was a department head. Most of the time it was personals as a personal. This was time I was a department head, so it was different because I was running the show, and I got to go to the Emmys. I got to get dressed, and because for years I've styled people's hair for the Emmys, watched them, get dressed and get their hair and their makeup and ready for the red carpet. This time I was actually going, and I had to get my hair done, and get my makeup done, and get the right dress. Michael Costello, who was an amazing, fashion designer, made me a dress, and so it was just different for me. It was
And this
special.
was the film that you met Brandy on.
I
Is
met
this the
Brandy.
project where you met Brandy?
I met Brandy, yes, on Cinderella. Then I went to work with her on Moesha after that, and we done movies together, and album packagings, and albums, and TV shows and stuff. I had worked with Brandy quite a bit over the years, but yeah. But the Emmy was nominated for Euphoria, and I actually got to go to the Emmys and see what it was like. Normally, I just do my client, and they go. Never had been actually to the Emmys, as a guest,
as a nominee.
As a nominee. Yeah, nice. I've gone to do hair or whatever, backstage, whatever. But this was we sat like right in the front. We had like great seats, and I was just like, "Ooh, this is nice. This is really special."
Nice.
Yes.
Awesome. Cinderella was another show that afforded you a lot of creativity. You got to work with pieces and hair, jewelry like tiaras and things like that. Were you nervous about any of that, or you had done B.A.P.S, so I guess not.
You know what? I don't have the time to really get nervous. My brain automatically kicks in. Let me figure this out. What can I do? Who can I call? What can I do? How can I figure this out? I click into action mode.
And since it was a fairy tale, did you have a lot of frames of reference for that?
Well, yeah, but we had references, but these were, kind of reimagined again because, the original, and also too, it depends. Some productions don't want the same look that has been recreated. They want to recreate their own version, But, Cinderella still, even though Brandy had braids, it still had that, that updo vibe when she becomes Cinderella. You have to see that transformation from when she was, sweeping and, her hair was down and her braids was down and she's sweeping and doing all the chores around the home. And then she meets her Prince Charming, and then she has to transform into this, beautiful glam updo. And so kind of reimagining what braids would be like in that whole thing. So we had to create our own way to kind of take the braids and give them that updo kind of look and more of that Cinderella vibe.
Well, that show was quite a cultural moment for us. It was a big event.
Yeah.
Whoopi Goldberg, Victor Gerber, Whitney Houston, Brandy, Jason Alex. I mean, there were just. I mean, and it was a moment. Like people were like, "Did you see Cinderella?" I mean, it was appointment TV,
right.
And you were part of that.
Yeah, I was. And it's interesting enough, before they started taking characters like that, princesses and black girls becoming princesses. You didn't really see that, before that. I don't remember seeing it before Cinderella. But now you got like the mermaid and
the frog and the princess.
The frog, yeah. Now you see more of it, but back then you didn't see it. That was new. Nice. That was pretty iconic, and that was great.
Nice. Kim Kimble, where do you see yourself in 10 years? What's on the horizon for you?
My 10 years, well, of course, I'm entrepreneurs, definitely. I like hair. Hair is my thing. So I am definitely want to be, have an iconic brand like Vida Sassoon, with what they do. So I definitely will continue to manufacture, create products, and sell products, as well as still work behind the scenes doing hair somewhere. Maybe teaching more, educating, in this space. And maybe even creating some of my own beauty content. That is, because now there's all kinds of ways to see it. You can stream it. You can
producing your own television shows.
Producing my own television shows in the beauty space. That's kind of where I would like to see. I think that's the next level for me. I still got to get my Oscar, and I still got to get my Emmy.
That's right.
But that's what I would like to see.
It's gonna happen. Claim it. Just go get it.
Yeah, claim it, name it. Name it, claim it. Name it, claim it.
Name it, claim it. My beautiful sister, I love you.
I love you too. Thank you. You were one of the best interviewers I've ever had.
OMG. Thank you for sitting down with us today.
Thank you for having me. I want to thank the Academy. No, I'm just kidding. Television Academy.
Is representation on TV and film important to you? You have just watched Kim Kimble interview, part 3 of 3.